Jiang Tianming's expression soured, but he quickly composed himself, insisting that Qi Huang would accept defeat with grace, unlike Si Zhaohua, whose name he didn't finish, though the distaste in his eyes said enough. Su Bei didn't argue, sensing Tianming's emotions were clouding his judgment. After all, whether someone was a villain or a protagonist could flip with a single panel. Later, Su Bei returned to his dorm and checked the draw. His next opponent was from Class B, and relief washed over him. Most of his classmates had the same fate, except for Jiang Tianming, who once again had to face Class A. While Su Bei had already slipped out of his role as disposable cannon fodder, the so-called protagonist was still stuck grinding through hardship. Skipping his nap, Su Bei practiced manipulating mental power, a skill he'd bluffed his way into possessing, so now he needed to fake it till he made it. At the very least, he needed to move objects remotely to pass the illusion. By afternoon, the numbers had thinned to 26, and Su Bei breezed through the match. In an open arena without traps, brute strength often triumphed, but Su Bei, though lacking enhancement powers, relied on stamina, agility, and well-honed combat instincts to win. If he had chosen the route of body amplification, the outcome might have flipped entirely because once Su Bei got close, hardly anyone could handle him. The only real counters were ironclad defense, or keeping him out of range long enough to chip him down. Qi Huang earlier in the day paid the price for overconfidence, letting him close and nearly paying the price despite her Phoenix's power. A little more distance, a bit more caution, and she'd have turned it into a game of predator and prey. But the poor soul from Class B wasn't so lucky lacking strength and defense. He went down fast. The thinning roster sped up the pace, and in the first round, Wu Jin bowed out, though his dramatic hairstyle remained unshaken. Now 18 remained, and the new matchups brought some familiar tension. Su Bei versus Zhao Xiaoyu, which felt like fortune smiling. Still, all eyes, at least from his circle, were on Wu Mingbai clashing with Zhou Renji, a showdown with a foregone conclusion in Su Bei's mind. After all, Wu Mingbai wasn't just stronger, he wasn't written to lose to someone like Zhou, who wore his villainy like a sneer and didn't have the charm to redeem it. Su Bei didn't need to slap characters like this, reality would do it for him. While curious about how Wu Mingbai planned to win, especially with his predictable Earth ability against Zhou Renji's mysterious spatial one, Su Bei stepped into the chaos of the tournament ring, where 9 matches unfolded at once. Zhao Xiaoyu, caught between disappointment and resignation, had no illusions. This wasn't her story to win. Facing Su Bei in his enigmatic Gear of Destiny, she recalled past battles and the impossible odds he'd shattered, even against the powerful Qi Huang. Deep down, she knew she couldn't beat him, even if he had no power at all. They locked eyes. Just as Su Bei prepared to end it swiftly, Zhao Xiaoyu asked if there was any way she could win. No chance, he said, not stopping for even a second. With a bitter smile, she raised her guard and retreated to the ring's edge, knowing the end was already written. Despite the odds, she refused to surrender, but Su Bei saw right through her scheme the moment it formed. She planned to switch places at the last second and use herself as bait to knock him out instead. But Su Bei wasn't playing along. Just as she reached the edge, he surged forward, launched into the air, and kicked her clean out of the ring. The referee didn't miss a beat, declaring Su Bei the winner, though he couldn't resist a jab about sportsmanship afterward, prompting Su Bei to shrug and quip about boosting the school's image. When asked about Zhao Xiaoyu, still sprawled on the floor, Su Bei played innocent, while Zhao Xiaoyu, unwilling to be escorted by the very person who kicked her out, dramatically raised a hand and requested a pretty female teacher to carry her away. The referee raised an eyebrow, half laughing. "You're getting picky now?" But still, he called over the pretty infirmary teacher, who scooped her up like a princess and carried her away, leaving Su Bei to stroll off the stage with a satisfied grin, already proclaiming his victory. With most matches wrapped up, only Wu Mingbai and Zhou Renji were still locked in battle. From where he stood, the stage was hidden, so Su Bei checked the latest standings. 8 had advanced 5 of them from Class F, a shocking ratio, even by his expectations. Without the omniscient view of the manga panels in the sealed arena today, he had no clue how they'd pulled it off. But one thing was certain: when the manga updated, Mutiran's mystery wouldn't stay hidden. That's when it hit him. The next 2 days were packed. Could the author really cram the group battle into the same chapter? Manga awareness paused, then replied, The pacing's off. He split it probably 2 parts. Su-ba exhaled, relieved. With more time, his prep could actually matter. Waiting for Wu Mingbai's match to finish, boredom crept in, so he pulled out his phone, only to see the group chat explode with 9+ unread messages. The chat thread was on fire, messages popping non-stop like comic speech bubbles in a heated panel. Su-ba, curiosity peaked, scrolled upward, eyes widening as the commentary unfolded. Mushroom Bro declared another victory for Class F, 5 wins now. Creepy Crawler proudly chimed in, claiming the class's rise. Study Hard jumped in, asking if Creepy Crawler knew the winners personally. Always Improving pressed for more info, wondering if these were misassigned geniuses. Arthur echoed the curiosity. Cups and Plates teased a couple in the chat, suspecting matching usernames, prompting a flustered defense from Study Hard. Creepy Crawler admitted only vague knowledge of the group, calling them a flock of like-minded misfits. Then Bamboo stepped in with actual intel, naming 2 with game-breaking abilities. Prophecy and Word Spirit. No one could explain how such powers landed in Class F, but their rise? Totally expected. As the crowd fixates on the arena, 2 figures emerge. Zhou Renji leads, face drained and spirit crushed, a stark contrast to his usual pomp. Wu Mingbai trails behind, unreadable. The verdict is clear before anyone speaks. Shock ripples through the onlookers. Ai Baozhu can't believe Zhou lost. She trusted his strength, tolerated his arrogance because of it. Now, that belief crumbles. Zhou, stripped of pride, blames underhanded tactics, calling Wu a schemer, trying to save face with bitter words. But her skeptical glance cuts deeper than any insult. She's not buying it, and neither is the story. You're a man. He's a man. How could his tactics be so dirty? Zhou Renji was caught off guard by the jab, scrambling for words that never landed. But Si Zhaohua cut in, sharp as ever. Enough talk. A loss is a loss. Let them gloat over 1 round. She wasn't going to lose. Not now, not ever. Ai Baozhu echoed the fire, flat out refusing to believe her elegant domain could be cracked by a bunch of nobodies. Meanwhile, Wu Mingbai's team might as well have been in a parade. Banners flapping and victory vibes in full swing. Well, maybe not that dramatic. Mo Xiaotian cheered like he'd just seen his hero rise, itching for a future duel, even if it had to be in secret. But Mingbai just smirked, dream on, it's not even dark yet. And then Jiang Tianming slid in, cool as ever, calling it matches done, wins stacked, time to eat. Lan Subing raised her hand and declared she'd treat, her voice softening under everyone's gaze, especially Su Bei's. As she explained, it was to celebrate finally being able to use her word spirit ability one-on-one. That was why she'd done so well in recent matches. No crowds, no pressure, just quiet duels where her voice could flow. Jiang Tianming and the others lit up with excitement, asking if she'd really overcome it and urging her to tell her parents, who had long worried about her condition. With a proud smile, she said she'd surprise them after tomorrow's exam with both her results and this breakthrough. Su-Bei, meanwhile, sat stunned. He thought her progress only came after battling Ai Baozhu. Was she already stronger? That didn't fit the manga world's logic. His eyes flicked toward her, cautious. If they were opponents tomorrow, maybe she was hiding something. Just then, Mutirin broke the silence, reminding them only 9 contenders remain for the next match. As the question dropped, how will the school arrange our pairings? Time seemed to freeze, and the weight of the problem hit everyone at once. 9 students. But only even numbers made perfect pairs. Someone was bound to be left out, forced to wait on the sidelines while the others trained. But Su-Bei, always the wild card, snapped them back to reality with a grin and a flick of his fingers. Why worry about school logistics when dinner called? That broke the tension, and they all headed out to eat. Later that night, while the dorm lights dimmed, Su-Bei locked himself in quiet preparation. No shortcut could hand him mastery over his mental power, so he dove into grueling, mind-draining practice, summoning intricate gears carved with raw intent. These gears of destiny shimmered with delicate patterns, useless for prediction now, but perfect for his goal, burned through every ounce of mental energy. The gears piled higher around him like a fortress of focus, each one a step closer to wielding his power without hesitation when tomorrow's trials began. To make the new power truly his own, he had to burn it all away, drain every drop of mental energy until there was nothing left, then let it regenerate. It wasn't that he'd held back before, he simply hadn't thought of this brutal method. And brutal, it was draining. His mind felt like having his brain wrung out like a wet rag. As gear after gear stacked higher beside him, his face turned ghostly pale, sweat poured down, and he swayed like a thread in the wind. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to preserve what little strength he had, but he didn't. One gear, another. Until at last, his mind gave out and the world went black. Morning came with a rude awakening. The alarm blared at 7 a.m., and his head throbbed like a comic panel struck by a hammer. Still dazed, he checked his phone. Today's match was set for 8. Yesterday's chaos had been addressed. Joe's match would be replayed, but its result wouldn't shift rankings unless his opponent won, creating a new problem entirely. If that happened, the second round would have 5 players, triggering another imbalance. The Academy had already anticipated this and set Mu Tirin, the top contender among those with diverse physical abilities, to face Joe Renji, a strategic match meant to balance power and risk. Mu Tirin accepted the setup, lured by the guaranteed 100 points and the chance to avoid fighting familiar faces, figuring a previously defeated opponent was his best shot. Meanwhile, Subi Ei glanced at his own opponent, Feng Lan. Other matchups buzzed with potential Mo Xiaotian against Si Xiaohua, Zhang Tianming facing Wu Mingbai, and Lan Subing versus Ai Baozhu. If Subi Ei weren't a participant, he'd be excited just to watch. But his challenge was steep. Feng Lan wasn't just good. She could predict moves before they happened, an almost divine foresight in combat. Dodging her visions was hopeless. Instead, Subi Ei had to act in ways she couldn't counter, even if she saw them coming. But to pull that off, he first had to figure out the range of her premonitions. As he stepped into the training field, most fighters had already arrived. Though the stakes were high, only Ai Baozhu and Si Xiaohua seemed truly tense. 5 from Class F, 1 from Class D, the prestige of victory was enormous. Yet even defeat wouldn't erase their pride. Mo Xiaotian from Class A, unburdened, radiated ease. Across the field, Zhang Tianming inhaled deeply, offering a small smile toward Wu Mingbai, despite knowing they were moments from becoming enemies. It looked like a real showdown was finally happening. Wu Mingbai grinned, confident and bright, claiming he'd leveled up and warning the other he might not keep up. Zhang Tianming shot back with smug disdain, telling him not to cry when it was over, then marched into the arena. Meanwhile, Mo Xiaotian bounced in circles like an overexcited red-furred pup, chirping with joy at finally getting to face Si Xiaohua, who returned his enthusiasm with calm courtesy. Once they stepped in, Ai Baozhu spun back toward Lan Subing, smirking with the same jab about crying in defeat. But Lan Subing, composed and quiet, simply smiled and walked past without a word, igniting Ai Baozhu's fury. She stomped and followed, boiling. At the same time, Mu Tirin and Joe Renji, locked in silent dislike, walked wordlessly to their own match. Tension thick as ink between them. The clash dragged on, both refusing to yield, locked in a grueling stalemate until Subi Ei realized brute strength alone wouldn't cut it. Sure, he had more stamina, but grinding down Feng Lan only to win a hollow round held no meaning. Letting others slide into the finals wasn't his idea of victory. Then came the epiphany. Feng Lan could see 5 seconds into the future. That's why every attack fizzled. Subi Ei had to craft a trap, a fatal strike hidden behind a delay, outside her window of foresight. Mental power was the key. He couldn't lift much with it, but when it came to manipulating his own gears, he was a maestro. Each strike now was a setup, precision over power, strategy over instinct. Feng Lan's unease grew. These attacks were different, deliberate. She blocked, confused, asking what he was doing. Subi Ei just smirked mid-blow and fired back with a grin. Didn't I tell you? You're a natural fighter. Don't waste that. Feng Lan stumbled back, dodging one blow only to get clocked in the head from the other side. Classic double trouble. Gritting his teeth, he muttered he'd train later, clearly stalling. Subi Ei gave a quiet chuckle but saved her breath. One slip now and she'd be wheezing mid-fight. Not cool. Once she was ready, her attack softened and her face relaxed, the countdown ticking in her mind. 5 seconds later, her smile barely twitched. Feng Lan's eyes narrowed. He'd felt something off. You were putting stuff on me, he snapped. Subi Ei halted, all grace and calm. Yep, want to try it out? With a flick of thought, her hidden gears sprang up sharp, edged, perfectly placed along his collar, hat, even pockets, now aimed like a dozen metallic fangs at his vitals. Feng Lan, having glimpsed this moment in a reverse vision, didn't resist, just puzzled over the setup. Since I knew you'd be my opponent, Subi Ei said simply. But Feng Lan still couldn't shake the unease. You knew you didn't need all this to win, right? Feng Lan stumbled back, narrowly avoiding another blow, but couldn't block everything one hit. Landed square on his head. Gritting his teeth, he muttered he'd train more after this. Subi gave a knowing chuckle, but kept quiet. Talking mid-fight could backfire. Then, as if flipping a switch, Subei's attack softened. 5 seconds ticked by, and his lips curled into a subtle smile. Suddenly, Feng Lan froze, eyes sharp. He realized something had been slipped onto him. Subi paused, still smiling, and confirmed it, offering a chilling invitation. With a pulse of mental energy, the hidden gears Subi had planted earlier nestled in collar, hat, and pockets rose like deadly flowers, each blade glinting toward Feng Lan's vitals. Knowing resistance was pointless, Feng Lan stood still, eyes filled with confusion. When had this trap been set? Subei's answer was simple. The moment he became the opponent, and yet Feng Lan couldn't help but ask, was all this really necessary to win? Subi wasn't interested in dragging out a battle just to wear down Feng Lan's mental power. What fun would that be? Instead, he grinned and chose a more thrilling route, taking the stage with flair. Though Feng Lan tried to predict and dodge, Subei's attacks came too fast, too fierce, forcing him to tank the blows where he could. The match ended, not with rage, but with both stepping down side by side, Subi smiling. Feng Lan bloodied but unreadable. The bruises lent Feng Lan a dangerous edge, flipping his usual calm into something almost rebellious. On the sidelines, Mo Xiaotian and Si Zhaohua looked stunned. Subi and Feng Lan were never this wrecked. Whatever happened on that stage wasn't just a fight, it was a clash of minds, strategy, and something unspoken. Feng Lan stood unfazed, his calm expression a quiet contrast to the murmurs around him. Even as pain tightened in his body, he merely muttered about visiting the infirmary later. With everyone held on the field until final results dropped, his casual mention of leaving said more than any official announcement could. The others got the message instantly. A nearby student offered congratulations with thinly veiled curiosity, aware that surviving the last day was nearly a golden ticket to Class A, where skill wasn't everything brains and grit could close the gap. Then came the next match's aftermath. One fighter stood smug, pale, clutching his stomach, while the other, expression twisted, refused even the comfort of a friend. "I'm not avoiding you," he growled, "but stay away for your own good." "Off to the side," the victor sneered, rolling his eyes with a barked laugh. "Stop being so dramatic." "No one else is whining like you." The loser's voice dropped, bitterness spilling out like ink. "That's because they don't know." Mu Tiran snapped back unexpectedly. The exchange caught Subei's attention, making him shoot Zhou Renji a thoughtful look. Suddenly, a strange realization crossed his face. As Mo Xiaotian stood off to the side, clearly confused yet obedient, Subi kindly decided to clarify, "The class president is doing this for your own good." The moment those words left his mouth, all eyes turned to Subi. Mo Xiaotian, sensing Subi knew something, quickly asked, "What's going on, brother Bei? Tell me." Since Subi wasn't worried about Zhou Renji being a threat, he felt free to share his guess. However, instead of just spilling the beans, he turned to Mu Tiran, asking, "May I?" Before Mu Tiran could answer, Zhou Renji snapped, "Shouldn't you be asking me? It's my ability after all." Subi casually shrugged, eyeing Zhou Renji. "Well, I figured out your ability, didn't I?" He asked Mu Tiran because they had a good relationship, and if Mu Tiran didn't want him to reveal anything, he'd keep quiet. To Subi it wasn't a big deal, just a little gross. But asking Zhou Renji, that was a different story. Subi had figured it out himself, so why keep it a secret? Mu Tiran, unfazed, nodded. "Go ahead, I'll be fine once I take a shower." Subi finally revealed to a curious Mo Xiaotian that Zhou Renji's terrifying ability let him absorb people into his stomach. Yes, that black space everyone mentioned was literally his digestive system, complete with saliva and acid. Mo Xiaotian, completely unfazed, nodded with sudden clarity and sincerely suggested that Mu Tiran take a shower after all that internal struggling. The group fell into stunned silence before Si Zhaohua dryly commented to Subi that he finally understood why he wanted to join their team, only for Subi to shoot back that such an insult to their group wouldn't be tolerated, triggering uncontrollable laughter from everyone but the still baffled Mo Xiaotian. Just as the humor settled, Lan Subing arrived with A Baoju, who looked tearful and angry. Si Zhaohua immediately sensed something was wrong, but when she admitted she'd simply lost a fight, His tension eased after all. Going up against someone like Lan Subing, who could see through social deception, wasn't exactly a fair match. Subei finally explained that Joe Renji's terrifying ability let him absorb people into his stomach. Yes, the infamous black space was actually a digestive nightmare full of saliva and acid. Mo Xiaotian's eyes widened with sudden clarity, then turned to Mu Tieran with grave sincerity, urging him to shower after such a gross ordeal. The group was stunned silent until Si Xiaohua deadpanned that this was exactly why he wanted to join Subei's crew, only for Subei to reject the idea with mock offense. Laughter erupted except from Mo Xiaotian, still completely lost. Just as the tension eased, Lan Subing appeared alongside Ai Baozhu, whose red-rimmed eyes said she'd clearly been crying. Si Xiaohua frowned and asked what happened, only for Ai Baozhu to admit she lost and shoot Lan Subing, a resentful look. Relieved it wasn't something worse, Si Xiaohua brushed it off. After all, Lan Subing was no easy opponent, and no underhanded trick was going to work on her. Feng Lan requested to visit the infirmary, but the referee told her the school doctor would come instead. She couldn't leave until the final winner was decided. When the matchups were revealed, Subei was paired with Si Xiaohua, and Jiang Tianming with Lan Subing. It was a favorable draw for Subei. He could gather intel on Jiang by analyzing the manga later, rather than confronting him directly. He didn't need to prove himself against evenly matched opponents like Si Xiaohua and Wu Mingbai had. His style was to outthink, not just outfight. With no need for small talk, Subei and Si Xiaohua entered the ring, both fully focused. Si Xiaohua activated his angel form right away, feathers flying as he bowed and expressed curiosity about Subei's power. In response, Subei dodged the incoming feather barrage with a backward bend, launching 5 razor-sharp gears with his mind. He'd kept this move hidden in earlier matches, especially against Feng Lan, who could have predicted it. But now, there was no need to hold back. As the gears sliced through the air toward him, Si Xiaohua folded his wings with ease, blocking the attack like it was nothing, then spread them wide again with a smug smile. He noted, almost playfully, how their fighting styles weren't so different. In a sharp move, he released the outermost layer of feathers from his wings, sending them flying straight at Subei. Subei ducked and dodged, tossing out a snarky remark about hair loss as he twisted left and right to avoid the barrage. Just when he thought he was safe, a sinister slicing sound whistled from behind his instincts, screamed, and he flipped sideways just in time. A beat later, feathers slashed past where he'd just been. One tore through his uniform, another grazed his cheek, leaving a thin red line. These weren't just feathers, they were boomerangs, returning to Si Xiaohua's wings and reattaching perfectly, like obedient soldiers returning to formation. Hovering above, Si Xiaohua flashed a graceful smile and coolly brushed off the concern. Meanwhile, Subei crouched below, wiping away the blood, knowing full well he couldn't keep dodging forever. Even if he had to lose, he'd make sure it looked good. With the flick of his hand, 5 more gears spun through the air this time. They looked like mere throws, but something deeper stirred beneath the surface. With wings too bulky for quick dodges, Si Xiaohua relied on shielding himself during wide-range attacks each time he defended. His feathers halted. Subei's eyes sharpened. That pause was the crack he needed. If he timed it right, he could strike before Si Xiaohua switched from defense to offense. But Si Xiaohua, smug in his skybound power, launched a feather barrage the moment Subei crouched. Subei rolled aside just in time, gears spinning to life in retaliation. 5 flew forward as bait, and just as predicted, Si Xiaohua shielded himself. But Subei wasn't done. His psychic grip sent 5 more gears sneaking towards Si Xiaohua's neck. Victory seemed seconds away until a calm voice chuckled, exposing the truth. Si Xiaohua hadn't opened his wings yet. The gears were deflected, feathers slicing them midair. Subei froze. His plan was red. Si Xiaohua emerged with a smirk, wings unfolding slowly. He saw everything even hidden behind feathers. Subei's trick had clearly flopped, and who knew how many others had fallen for the same trap. With a weary sigh, he kept dodging Si Xiaohua's relentless strikes, now laced with sharp feathers from both offense and defense. Thankfully, those wings weren't too flexible, or Subei would have been forced to give up long ago. What saved him wasn't just reflexes, but the fact that Si Xiaohua kept his position fixed, making the attacks more predictable. Even the feathers that circled back could be sensed and avoided with his heightened psychic awareness. Having already faced something similar against Qi Huang, Su Bei had the edge, but that didn't make it easy. Keeping up this level of focus while still launching his own useless attacks was draining fast. He knew that the moment he stopped, Si Zhaohua would get the upper hand, and one mistake could cost him everything. Desperately thinking of a new tactic, Su Bei realized ordinary moves wouldn't work. He had to catch Si Zhaohua off guard. But how do you surprise someone with eyes in the sky and wings for shields? Then, as another wave of feathers came slicing through the air, a flash of inspiration hit him, and this time, he didn't dodge completely. At the last moment, he skillfully dodged the feather, but just as it neared, he reached out and grabbed it in a reverse grip. Instantly, a sharp cut appeared on his palm, but he didn't hesitate. He summoned a gear, attaching it to the feather. Si Zhaohua, having thrown most of his feathers, began to pull them back in. He couldn't afford to release too many at once. Doing so would leave him unprotected, and Su Bei would have a chance to counter. He knew a mutual loss would only benefit Su Bei, so his plan was to wear him down slowly. Dodging the feathers wasn't easy, and Su Bei's increasingly pale face showed the toll it was taking on him. Once Su Bei's stamina was gone, victory would be Si Zhaohua's. As the feathers floated back to their master, Su Bei let go of the one he'd been holding, letting it return. But the gear stayed hidden beneath it, trailing close behind. To keep Si Zhaohua distracted, Su Bei tossed a few more gears into the air. They weren't meant to hit, but just close enough to make Si Zhaohua dodge. Confident in the harmlessness of the gears, Si Zhaohua easily avoided them, allowing the infiltrating feather to land back where it belonged. Suppressing his excitement, Su Bei sent 5 more gears, this time aiming directly for Si Zhaohua's face. Forced to shield himself with his wings, Si Zhaohua closed them tightly just in time for the hidden gear within the feather to spring forward, targeting his throat. If it hit, Su Bei would emerge the victor. Su Bei wasn't afraid of hurting Si Zhaohua. He trusted the Academy's defenses. But when Si Zhaohua crashed to the ground with a grunt, wings wrapped tight in defense, Su Bei realized something was off. The referee stayed silent. His psychic senses were blocked, his gear unresponsive. Then, the wings opened, and there stood Si Zhaohua, bleeding but standing, holding Su Bei's gear with a grim face and a chilling line. Too bad. You almost succeeded. Moments earlier, Si Zhaohua had relaxed, only to sense danger too late. He barely dodged a critical strike blood for a mistake. It was the worst injury he'd ever taken, but instead of anger, there was respect. Su Bei had outplayed him, and for the first time, Si Zhaohua saw him not as a nuisance, but a true rival. Su Bei, you're impressive. He declared it with gravity, his strongest move, unleashed as a gesture of respect. Divine judgment. Su Bei blinked, confused. As the dust settled and they exited the arena, Su Bei's face was dark with irritation, while Si Zhaohua looked drained, his usual smugness missing. Both bore battle marks, a testament to a match too close to call. Yet oddly, they walked side by side, no longer rivals but something less hostile. From the sidelines, Mu Tiran squinted suspiciously. Wait, are you two copying me and Zhou Renji? His question wasn't about friendship, it was about the bruises. Ai Baozu rushed over, all concern, calling out to Zhao Hua, who raised an eyebrow. Not calling me young Master C anymore? Her face turned crimson. It just sounds more impressive, okay? He said nothing, just smiled faintly. Su Bei snorted, walking past. That name is absurd. Also, he's definitely not fine. Book him a psych check after the exams. Ai Baozu froze, speechless. She paused, glancing between the two, and suddenly realized she had missed a crucial question. So, who won? Not too long ago, it would have been unthinkable for anyone other than Si Zhaohua to claim victory. But now, seeing both of them wounded and Si Zhaohua looking drained, things weren't so clear. To her surprise, Si Zhaohua answered, I won. Before Ai Baozu could even relax, Su Bei coolly added, but he's definitely going to lose in the next round. Why? Ai Baozu blurted, caught off guard. Su Bei smirked, mimicking Si Zhaohua's earlier tone, divine judgment. Ai Baozu blinked, processing the answer. Then, with a shocked gasp, she asked, You used that move? Mo Xiaotian leaned in, eager for details. What move? Is it the one you used when someone asked for it the other day? Si Zhaohua gave a slight nod. He's strong. I didn't want to lose. In other words, if Si Jiahua hadn't pulled out his ultimate move, he might have lost. Even Ai Baoju, who always admired Si Jiahua, couldn't argue with that. She realized that if Subi Ei had managed to injure Si Jiahua despite his nearly flawless defense, it meant he could do it again, and the wound on Si Jiahua's neck, dangerously close to his throat, made that fact even clearer. Ai Baoju, anxious about the finals, worried aloud. She knew Si Jiahua's energy would be nearly gone after using his ultimate move, leaving even his basic abilities strained. But Si Jiahua remained unbothered, confidently claiming that Lan Subing's word spirit had no effect on him, only to be cut off by Subei's sudden declaration that Jiang Tianming would win. Silence followed. Ai Baoju and Si Jiahua exchanged a glance, remembering Feng Lan's eerie prediction about Subei's possible foresight. Still skeptical, Ai Baoju questioned how Jiang Tianming could resist word spirit, recalling all too well her own helpless defeat against it. Subi Ei offered no explanation, he simply knew the outcome, leaving the method to the unfolding comic itself. After a pause, Si Jiahua decided to trust him making things, in his words, even simpler. Even if his powers were still at the most basic level, he was certain he could crush Jiang Tianming with ease, but that bold claim made Subi Ei a bit embarrassed for him, especially when Wu Mingbai sneered and dismissed it as a fantasy, confidently eyeing the first place prize. Unbothered by the jab, the confident one turned back to Subi Ei, clearly impressed, and asked if he'd been training in martial arts since childhood, one of the few to ever acknowledge Subei's fighting skills so directly. Anyone unaware of Subei's real abilities would easily mistake his power for pure martial prowess. Subi Ei gave a small nod. Another curious voice chimed in, wondering just how strong he really was. The answer came slow but firm. The top of the freshmen. Right then, Jiang Tianming and Lan Subing strolled over, skipping the formalities as Jiang announced his victory only to be met with dead silence. No shock, no surprise, just calm stares. He paused, puzzled, then caught on his eyes narrowing as he turned to Subi Ei and asked, "Did you predict it?" Jiang Tianming fixed his gaze on Subi Ei, the bandage on Subi's face instantly cluing him in this wasn't just some ordinary win. Then came the real question. Who's next? Subi Ei, calm but visibly processing the chaos, replied, Si Jiahua. And just like that, the absurd memory came rushing back Jiahua's failed strike, Subei's resigned readiness to forfeit, and then bam out of nowhere, the ultimate move. Divine Judgment. The absurdity didn't end there. Unlike last time, the referee didn't interfere immediately. Only when that terrifying power neared full release did they step in with a shield. Too late. Subi Ei had already absorbed nearly the full force. When Jiahua cast it, Subi Ei didn't even try to dodge. It was like being locked in by fate itself. His body screamed danger, but he stood frozen, waiting for annihilation. Had that skill landed, it would have been game over. For beginners, something like that wasn't just strong, it was absolute. Looking back, one question echoed in his mind. Was it really Jiahua's decision, or had the author forced the move? As the match had unfolded, it was clear that the divine judgment of the veteran player was on a completely different level compared to the newcomers. They were no match for it. But then, something unexpected happened. Manga awareness suddenly interrupted itself, realizing it was about to reveal too much, and quickly went silent. Subi Ei raised an eyebrow, curious but choosing not to push for more details. He began to think about what had been hinted at. Not just resisted, he thought. What else could it be? Then, like a light bulb going off in his mind, Subei's expression shifted, realizing something crucial. It must be some sort of protagonist-level plot armor, he muttered to himself. Manga awareness didn't dare to ask what Subi Ei had figured out and quickly vanished. By the time Subi Ei snapped back to reality, Jiang Tianming and his group had gathered around him. They were curious, especially after the unexpected turn of events. With a brief break between matches, they couldn't help but ask him the burning question. Why didn't you use your ability before the match? Jiang Tianming asked carefully. Based on what they'd seen before, they all speculated that Subi Ei had the power to alter fate, much like in previous matches involving other students. But now, with this surprise loss to a top-ranked first year, everyone was left confused and intrigued. Subi Ei was momentarily caught off guard by the question, but then a wave of joy washed over him. Subi-ei had already hinted that Si Zhaohua's divine judgment wasn't something newcomers could handle. It wasn't even a fair fight. Just as manga awareness was about to reveal more, it abruptly stopped, catching itself before spoiling anything. Subi-ei caught the slip and narrowed his eyes, piecing together the implications. If the skill wasn't only meant to be resisted, then what else could it do? A wild thought crossed his mind, one that sounded suspiciously like main character invincibility, and he muttered under his breath. Manga awareness sensed danger and vanished without a word. Snapping back to reality, Subi-ei found Jiang Tianming and the others walking up to him during the match intermission, curiosity in their eyes. Jiang hesitantly asked why Subi-ei hadn't used his power before the fight. Everyone had assumed he could rewrite fate, like with Wu Jin and Zhao Zhaoyu, but this time, he'd lost, and not just to anyone, but the top-ranked first year. The question hit Subi-ei hard, but also sparked something like joy. With that single question, his power to reshape destiny was now undeniable. Call it what you will, mutual assistance, tactical alliance, fate fixer pact at work. They boosted his abilities, and he, in turn, would twist the gears of their stories. While Subi-ei was secretly celebrating, he plastered on a clueless face, asking why he'd use his power before a match. Wu Mingbai wasn't buying it, tossing back a sarcastic jab about bad acting, ironically quoting a line Subi-ei had once thrown at them during his fake prophecy stint. Karma's got sharp elbows, Subi-ei thought, forcing a crooked smile and claiming innocence. But even his dodging was an admission. He could change fate. When Lan Subing nudged Wu Mingbai, the boy played coy and asked if Subi-ei didn't want to win. Subi-ei raised a brow, unimpressed, and after a dramatic pause delivered a line sharp enough to cut panel borders. Ever heard the phrase, "A doctor cannot heal himself"? And with that, he turned away, worn out from the last battle. Truth is, if they hadn't handed him this perfect excuse to rest, he wouldn't have even bothered playing along. He didn't ask Subi-ei who would win. There was no need when the future already whispered its outcome to those who listened. 15 minutes later, Jiang Tianming emerged from the ring, victorious and bloodied, carrying Si Zhaohua in his arms with a smile that ignored the pain. His uniform was torn, his face cut, and his arm bore a brutal gash, so deep the bone nearly showed. Zhaohua, though less visibly injured, had fainted, pale and unconscious. Wu Mingbai was first to break the tension with a laugh, but Ai Baozhu stormed over, furious, demanding answer. She tried to lift Zhaohua but fumbled, nearly dropping him. Tianming saved him again, steady and alert. Quickly, he explained Zhaohua had passed out from overusing his mental strength, carefully omitting that it was his final strike that pushed him too far. Lan Subing and Wu Mingbai stood flanking Tianming, their presence enough to keep Ai Baozhu from escalating. He knew Subi-ei could always call the winner, but didn't bother asking what's the point when you're staring down fate itself. 15 minutes later, Jiang Tianming burst from the ring, battered but grinning like a lunatic, hauling an unconscious Si Zhaohua like a twisted trophy. His uniform's in tatters, his arm gashed wide open, bone nearly peeking out, and yet he's the one shouting victory. Zhaohua's out cold, pale, and barely breathing, but somehow still less wrecked than the one carrying him. Wu Mingbai cracks up first, clapping the chaos like it's a game show finale, while Ai Baozhu storms in, fire in her eyes, demanding answers, and nearly face-planting, trying to yank Zhaohua away. Lucky for everyone, Tianming's reflexes are still intact. He catches the guy mid-fall, then fires off a half-truth to dodge a slap. Zhaohua passed out from mental overload, nothing more. He skips the part where his own final blow did the damage, because with Ai Baozhu this fired up, honesty might get him around too. Lan Subing and Wu Mingbai slide in like bodyguards from a collapsing panel, bracing for the next explosion. Just then, Mo Xiaotian dashed in late, waving his arms and grinning like a kid on candy, shouting how incredible Jiang was for ranking first in Class F, and whining about not getting placed there too. Mu Tiran plopped a giant hand on his head like a bear calming its cub, saying he could still apply to transfer after midterms. But Mo protested by then. They'd all be in Class A and he'd be stuck in Class F, pouting that he'd missed them again, before bouncing back with a cheesy grin, declaring he'd be waiting in Class A. That's when the referee strode over with the school nurse, Ye Lin, her healing powers glowing as she handed out cups of luminous green spring water. It wasn't magic soda, it could only fix their bodies, not their worn out minds. She warned them to rest, with 2 days until the team battle. Then the referee cut in like a brick wall, reminding them not to spill the beans about today's match or face disqualification. Final twist? The team battles would throw them against nightmare beasts. Still disoriented, Si Xiaohua's golden eyes flickered open. The moment he recognized he was in the arms of his arch nemesis, shock took over and he started thrashing violently. With a sigh, Jiang Tianming carefully set him down, urging, "Can't you calm down for a second?" Si Xiaohua shot back, still reeling from the situation. "Who told you to hold me?" Jiang Tianming raised an eyebrow. "If I hadn't, would you have preferred to stay alone on the stage?" A brief pause, and he added with a hint of sarcasm, "It's the final, after all. Thought I'd show some humanity." Si Xiaohua, though still stunned, scoffed and straightened his clothes. He hadn't underestimated Jiang Tianming's strength during the fight, but that didn't mean his disdain for him had faded. Even after the defeat, Si Xiaohua was resolute in his coldness toward him. Even fully conscious, he couldn't believe he'd lost failure, had never touched him before. For someone who had always stood at the top, defeat felt unreal. She saw right through him and shot a warning glare at the other side. He gulped down the healing water, face steadying, then pointed straight at his rival. This wasn't over. Sure, he lost the solo round, but the team battle? That was his to win. He wasn't the kind to deny failure. No, what made someone weak was pretending it hadn't happened. Still, that didn't mean he thought the other guy was better. Not even close. He was going to prove himself again and reclaim the crown. The challenge landed, and the reply came sharp. His rival wasn't backing down either. Then, without warning, Su Bei heard it. The latest chapter of The King of Superpower has been updated. Please watch. So the exam was now split into 3 parts. That changed everything. He could already feel a shift inside him, his power morphing again. Something new pulsed through him. He didn't wait, just nodded and said coolly, "Now that the match is over, I'll take my leave." Mo Xiaoxian blinked in disbelief. Wasn't this the moment to celebrate their victory? Everyone had landed in the top 10, after all. But Su Bei didn't care about parties. His mind was already racing back to the strange hint he'd left behind. Something had shifted, and if he was right, this might be the doorway to changing fate itself. Mutira noticed his mood and quickly offered an out, saying he needed a bath. Jiang Tianming chimed in, noting they still needed to recover their mental strength. The real team battle was still ahead, and celebrating too early might curse them. They all agreed. The celebration could wait until after midterms. Meanwhile, Su Bei returned to the dorms, skipping the manga and diving straight into the changes in his power. In front of the mirror, Su Bei noticed something strange. The fate compass above his head had changed. Now there were 2 pointers, a large one that had always been there, slowly shifting with each ability change, and a new, smaller one that seemed to track minor life events, like winning a contest. Around them, an unfamiliar ring of gear-like slots appeared, as if inviting a new mechanism. Trusting his instinct, Su Bei conjured a spiraled gear that seemed to hum with a dizzying pull. He gently placed it around the smaller pointer and it clicked. As he turned the gear, the needle began to move, altering the direction of fate itself. Eyes wide with disbelief, he quickly spun it back, stunned by the realization. With this gear, he could manipulate destiny, but at the cost of immense mental strain. With massive wings weighing him down, Si Xiaohua relied on defense over speed, blocking sweeping attacks with ease, but Su Bei noticed something. Every time those wings closed in defense, the barrage of feathers paused. Was that the opening he needed? As Si Xiaohua hovered above, smug in his aerial dominance, Su Bei crouched, prompting another feathered assault. He dodged with a roll, barely avoiding the deadly strike, then summoned 10 gears, 5 launched directly at Si Xiaohua, who predictably shielded himself. But it was a ruse. The remaining gears, guided by psychic power, soared towards Si Xiaohua's exposed neck. Just as victory seemed within reach, Si Xiaohua's voice cut through the air, amused and composed. He'd seen through it all. Without moving his wings, 5 feathers shot out, destroying the incoming gears. Su Bei, stunned, realized too late his opponent could attack even from behind closed wings. As Si Xiaohua slowly unfolded them with a calm smile, he delivered the final blow. Not only could he strike, he could also see everything while hidden within. With just a few words, the class president instantly calmed down. Ha ha ha! Mo Xiaotian sure knows how to lighten the mood. Some laughed, others grumbled. This guy's always causing trouble. What's his issue with Class F? Ugh, this team's vibe is so cold, someone muttered. Another voice piped up. Wait, did Zhao Xiaoyu actually stand up for Wu Jin? Maybe she's not so bad after all. Maybe she just doesn't want to give up yet? Someone else suggested. The difference between the two teams is huge. Another commented, even though Zhang Zhang's team doesn't seem strong, I'd rather join their fun team any day. Just as it looked like Wu Jin was going to lose the next round, and he got some extra spotlight to highlight his character. Walking to the stage with his head down, he faced his opponent, a super-powered student from Class C. Class C students were known for their combat skills, and Wu Jin knew his opponent's ability was corrosive poison, thanks to Zhao Xiaoyu's earlier warning. Sure enough, the boy pulled out a bottle of purple liquid and taunted, I don't know how a Class F student made it this far, but if you don't want to end up disfigured, I'd back off if I were you. His whole strategy revolved around this poison, tossing a bottle at anyone who dared come too close. The moment his opponent was in pain, it was game over. In a ring match, unless you had invisibility, it was almost impossible to avoid getting hit. You dared to mess with my flawless skin? Now I'm mad and this win's mine as payback. With a cold smirk, he seized the last of the poison and dumped it straight onto his opponent's hand. The hiss was instant, the pain undeniable. No mercy. He dragged the stunned enemy across the stage and hurled him off the edge like yesterday's draft. Standing tall, gaze piercing through the stage fog, those rare pale gray eyes gleamed. Don't make me bleed next time. And just like that, the audience chat imploded. No one could believe what they'd just witnessed. You dared to mess up my perfect skin? Now I'm mad. Guess I'll just count this win as payback. With that, he snatched the leftover poison and dumped it right onto his opponent's hand. A sharp hiss tore through the air, barely a drop, but enough to make the guy writhe in agony. No hesitation. He dragged the screaming figure to the edge and booted him off the stage like trash. Standing tall, eyes cool, and glinting a rare gray, he stared into the haze below. Try not to hurt me next time. The crowd went wild. What was that? He's not playing around. That guy deserved it. Why didn't he fight back? There's something off here. Flawless skin? Is he breaking character or what? Su Bei could hardly believe his eyes. Was this really Wu Jin? After collapsing in pain, something in Wu Jin shifted. A strange, pale gray light with a metallic shimmer wrapped around him, unlike the dull glow of his earlier powers. It wasn't just a visual cue, his whole demeanor changed. He started acting vain? When the line flawless skin popped up, Su Bei nearly choked. Old Wu Jin would never say that. Then came the close-up. Those pale gray eyes, once lifeless, now sparkled. And something about his ability had evolved too. When Wu Jin grabbed his enemy's wrist, the guy just stood there frozen, unmoving even as the corrosive poison hit. Su Bei zoomed in. Suspicious. And there it was. The enemy's pupils were shaped like hearts. What had Wu Jin become? Heart-shaped pupils, typically a subtle visual cue for affection, briefly flash in Wu Jin's eyes, but Subei's sharp gaze narrows with suspicion. If it wasn't an artist's mistake, then was it Wu Jin's ability? Could it actually make others fall for him? That possibility sets off warning bells in Subei's mind. Such a power could be dangerous, especially if Wu Jin ever said the wrong thing. Pushing the thought aside, Su Bei dives back into the match footage. Mu Tiran might not have had the flashiest performance, but his sheer physical strength stands out. Facing off against Wang Lei's 1,000 arrows, Mu Tiran blocks most of them with brute force alone, far beyond what someone from Class F should manage. Su Bei starts to question, was Mu Tiran hiding his true strength all along, or had he powered up this much in just a month? Either way, one thing is clear, Mu Tiran isn't ordinary. With too many contestants in the second round, the comic skips most battles, zooming in only on Mo Xiaotian's clash from the main cast, while the rest get fast-forwarded cameos showing off flashy powers and oddball opponents. Su Bei figured he'd be invisible in this round, but surprise! The comment section lit up with people freaking out about his fight. His opponent's got Flame Phoenix. Seriously? Readers can't believe Su Bei won, even though they somehow knew he would. Theories fly. Maybe he secretly got a killer ability. Maybe Gear of Destiny is broken, or maybe his opponent was just a pushover. Subei's a little stunned, but kind of thrilled his power shifted recently, letting him peek at fate and nudge it a bit. But in actual combat, he's just a guy running on pure instinct, top-tier reflexes, and sheer grit. He's desperate for something more: actual offense, real defense, anything. The manga awareness catches his wishful thinking. But instead of helping, it snickers. If Subei's past opponents heard this, they'd lose it. Because even without Flash, his dodging, timing, and clean hits are next level. The comic skipped over minor scenes to save space, showing only the main group's battles, which was more than enough for action-loving readers. Subei kept an eye out for any surprise powers among the crew, but found nothing hidden. The real twist came from Lan Subing, who finally broke through her mental block and used Word Spirit smoothly once. Afterward, the ability vanished again, and she cleverly realized it only worked when she fought alone and unobserved. Her social anxiety was still her biggest enemy. Meanwhile, Chi Huang's reluctant lunch appearance turned into a showstopper, graceful as ever. She even attacked Subei with her Phoenix skill in 2 flashy panels. The audience loved her, and Subei had a sinking feeling she'd be sticking around. But it wasn't until Chi Huang left that he truly grasped the chaos inside Lan Subing's head. She'd imagined him and Chi Huang as star-crossed lovers in every wild scenario possible. Rivals, lovers, classmates, even spouses. Subei was stunned. That imagination of hers? She could write a whole manga on her own. Yet when he checked the comments section, all he saw was a wall of laughter. Defeated, he sighed and turned the page. Already exhausted by how ridiculous things had become, the comic skips over side characters to spotlight the protagonist crew in battle, much to the delight of action fans. Subei stays alert, watching for any hidden powers among his allies. None emerge. To his relief, Lan Subing surprises everyone by using her Word Spirit without hesitation for the first time, finally cracking part of her mental block. But the moment passes, and she finds herself powerless again unless alone and unseen her social anxiety remains a towering wall. During lunch, a side scene shows Chi Huang reluctantly entering the frame with elegance, even throwing a fiery Phoenix attack at Subei in 2 full panels, which wins readers over. Subei suspects she'll be sticking around. Only after she leaves does he realize the full madness of Lan Subing's earlier teasing. She imagined them as rival lovers, dramatic chasers, graduation partners, and even a married couple. Subei freezes, speechless. That girl's imagination could fuel an entire novel, and when he looks to the comment section for help, he finds only waves of laughter. Defeated, he sighs and flips to the next page. When Subei compared Chi Huang to Si Jiahua, silence struck like a dropped panel, characters frozen mid-expression, readers wide-eyed in disbelief. Then chaos. Laughter cascaded like ink spills, with echoes of female Si Jiahua bouncing through the comments. Jiang Tianming's stunned face a comic highlight. Meanwhile, in the only other match shown in full ink, Zhou Renji didn't just defeat Wu Mingbai, he devoured him. Literally. The panel snapped to Wu Mingbai's stunned gaze as he landed in total darkness, trapped inside Zhou's stomach. Confused, cautious, he touched the walls slick, pulsing, alive. A sharp sting followed as gastric acid met skin. He sniffed his burning hand, nose wrinkling, as comic reality melted into raw absurdity. The stench was unbearable, clinging to the air like rot soaked in ink. "What is this place? A garbage bin?" he grumbled, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. As Wu Mingbai stepped forward, he crouched and pressed his fingers to the floor, startled to find it had the same soft, slick texture as the walls. That wasn't the worst of it. Liquid was rising. It didn't flow. It seeped from the walls, relentless and silent. If there was no exit, he'd drown in it. Panic didn't suit him, but even he couldn't ignore the corrosion licking at his clothes. He scanned the chamber, a circular trap with no visible way out. The ground pulsed beneath him. With urgency crawling up his spine, Wu Mingbai pounded the walls, but they absorbed his strikes like rubber. Gritting his teeth, he summoned his earth element, forging a hardened blade of stone. He wouldn't wait for the flood. He'd carve his escape. It wasn't as hard as stone or sharp as iron, but earth was still his best ally until a spark lit in Wu Mingbai's eyes. A stone! Yes! With a quick flick, he summoned a faintly glowing fluorite. Holding it to the wall, he was stunned. The walls weren't walls at all, but red, pulsing flesh. Realization struck hard. This was no room. It was a stomach. And the corrosive liquid dripping down was stomach acid. He was inside Zhou Renji. And if that was true, waiting to be spit out meant defeat. Wu Mingbai wasn't here to lose, But brute force wouldn't work. His earth power was more support than strike, and if others before had failed to break free, the defenses must be brutal. Still, he had something they didn't. Insight. A grin crept across his face as he began flooding the space with sand, the ground around him rising while his skin paled. The determination in his eyes only grew sharper. Wu Mingbai stood on the arena floor, his eyes still blurry when he looked up to see Zhou Renji kneeling in front of him, retching uncontrollably. The sound of vomiting echoed through the air as Zhou clutched his throat, groaning in disgust. "Take the sand out of my stomach! It's disgusting!" He gasped, his stomach feeling like it was about to explode. Inside, it was a storm of sand, not something his body could digest. Wu Mingbai sneered, unimpressed. "I didn't even complain about you swallowing me. Ready to admit defeat?" Zhou Renji, desperate, immediately shouted, "I surrender! I surrender!" There was no way out now. With Wu Mingbai free and Zhou's abilities still on cooldown, he was completely vulnerable. Hearing the surrender, Wu Mingbai let go of his power, the tension finally lifting. Su Bei watched with a smile, the realization dawning on him Wu Mingbai's sharp mind was the key. While others had been overwhelmed by Zhou Renji's dark space, Wu Mingbai quickly figured out the nature of the ability and knew regular attacks wouldn't work. It was clear now why he was part of the protagonist group. Wu Mingbai used a clever trick to make Zhou Renji release him, turning the tables in a brilliant move. It was the perfect strategy, earning him full praise from everyone watching. Wu Mingbai really gets it. I love Wu Mingbai. I'm such a sapiosexual. A satisfying win. I couldn't stand that fat guy. The king of superpower has everyone's IQ online. After the match, while the protagonist group celebrated their victory, Si Jiahua and the others were left stunned by Zhou Renji's defeat. Su Bei couldn't help but admire how effective the comparison group was. The scene shifted to Zhou Renji back in his dorm, where the news of his loss had already reached his parents. The harsh words came pouring out. Useless. A waste of space. Can't do anything right. You should just die. Each one a sharp blow. Zhou Renji's face twisted with malice, but his years of emotional conditioning had left him numb to the cruelty. Instead of resenting his parents, he glared at his phone, muttering, "I'll make Class F pay for this." Su Bei couldn't help but sigh. Zhou Renji's nature, it seemed, was shaped by his family environment. After gaining a major mental boost, Su Bei felt his predictive powers surge. Though still limited to one forecast per week, he could now glimpse the fates of 5 people at once. While this was progress, what truly excited him was the idea of changing fates outright. The more readers believed in his ability to toss out those mysterious gears, the stronger that ability grew. As the story pushed forward into the second day, the author dove deep into every battle of the finals, refusing to skip a beat. Su Bei guessed this focus was why the team fights needed an extra chapter. First up, Mu Tiren clashed with Zhou Renji. Though Mu Tiren cracked the spatial trick, Zhou's counter ability ensured he didn't escape. Then came Mo Xiaotian versus Si Jiahua. Despite Mo's explosive air blocks, he was still outmatched by Si's angelic force. Su Bei noted Mo's clever use of compressed air, clearly a master in progress. But the real spectacle was Su Bei's duel with Feng Lan. At first, Su Bei seemed to fight with brute force, while Feng Lan revealed his full prophetic might. Then came the twist. Feng froze, encircled by floating gears. Only then did the audience realize Su Bei had been laying traps all along. And in that moment, it was clear Feng had already lost. Even with foresight, there was no escaping the storm of gears tightening around him. After his mental fortitude surged, Su Bei noticed a clear enhancement in his predictive powers. Though still bound to one forecast per week, he could now glimpse the fates of 5 individuals simultaneously. This upgrade was promising, yet what truly intrigued him was the possibility of evolving this power into something greater, an ability to twist destiny itself. As long as readers believed he could unleash countless gears, his potential would only rise. The story rolled into its second day, and the author, refusing to rush, gave each final battle ample spotlight. Su Bei figured this explained the added chapter for team fights. The clash between Mu Tiren and Zhou Renji was swift. Mu Tiren uncovered the spatial trick, but still couldn't break free from Zhou Renji's overwhelming counter. Then came Mo Xiaotian versus Si Jiahua. Despite Mo's fierce air blocks, Si's angel ability was simply superior. Still, Su Bei noted Mo's growing mastery explosive air blocks hinted at a clever compression technique. But the highlight was Subei's own duel with Feng Lan, which electrified the audience. Feng Lan, a true prophet in full control of his foresight, appeared dominant until Subei's brute force gave way to hidden gears that had quietly surrounded Feng Lan. In that suspended moment, it was obvious Feng Lan had already lost, and no amount of foresight could undo the trap now sealed around him. The golden-haired boy stood calm and sly, gears gleaming in his eyes as the white-haired one struggled within a trap of sharp, spinning cogs. A grin played on his lips as he faced the cornered figure, who could only ask, bewildered, why such theatrics were needed for victory. Panels flashed with their mental and stamina stats. His were nearly untouched. With a fox-like smirk, he replied that draining someone's power to win was boring. Why not make it fun? The audience erupted. Some cheered, some teased, some even shipped them, but all agreed on one thing. The Golden Boy didn't just aim to win, he aimed to rewrite the entire fight into something unforgettable. Subei never anticipated that a simple part of the story would stir such a heated debate. He hadn't said anything particularly remarkable, but the comic did an excellent job of setting the atmosphere. When the next battle between Ai Baozhu and Lan Subing arrived, Subei noticed the author seemed to rank the fights based on how much the readers care. Ai Baozhu launched her attack first, activating her elegant domain, trying to trap Lan Subing with clever words. But Lan Subing, despite her social anxiety, stood her ground, unfazed by the tricks. She had grown from someone who couldn't speak to a confident, sharp-witted individual. When it was her turn to speak, a single word spirit sent Ai Baozhu crashing out of the ring. For fans who had followed Lan Subing's journey since Season 1, this moment felt like watching a daughter or goddess finally come into her own, and the pride they felt was overwhelming. This was the heart of a character's development story. Subei realized he could introduce small arcs of growth in lesser moments, giving readers that same sense of satisfaction in nurturing characters. The last match of the first round featured Jiang Tianming and Wu Mingbai, an internal conflict among the protagonist group that promised intense action. With their history of shared hardship, the two quickly went into an all-out brawl, and anyone watching would think they were bitter enemies. Both orphans raised together, their fighting styles were eerily similar. After his mental fortitude surged, Subei noticed a clear enhancement in his predictive powers. Though still bound to one forecast per week, he could now glimpse the fates of 5 individuals simultaneously. This upgrade was promising, yet what truly intrigued him was the possibility of evolving this power into something greater, an ability to twist destiny itself. As long as readers believed he could unleash countless gears, his potential would only rise. The story rolled into its second day, and the author, refusing to rush, gave each final battle ample spotlight. Subei figured this explained the added chapter for team fights. The clash between Mu Tiran and Zhou Renji was swift. Mu Tiran uncovered the spatial trick, but still couldn't break free from Zhou Renji's overwhelming counter. Then came Mo Xiaotian versus Si Zhaohua. Despite Mo's fierce air blocks, Si's angel ability was simply superior. Still, Subei noted Mo's growing mastery explosive air blocks hinted at a clever compression technique, but the highlight was Subei's own duel with Feng Lan, which electrified the audience. Feng Lan, a true prophet in full control of his foresight, appeared dominant until Subei's brute force gave way to hidden gears that had quietly surrounded Feng Lan. In that suspended moment, it was obvious Feng Lan had already lost, and no amount of foresight could undo the trap now sealed around him. Jiang Tianming had been hiding his object control power all along, a gift from the first volume's final boss. No wonder he never bothered to sweep the sand away before. Now, Subei finally catches on. With victory secured, Jiang Tianming drops his usual calm and throws an arm around Wu Mingbai, all smug. How is that move? But Wu Mingbai doesn't bite. Instead, he smirks and plays the next card. If he's lost, then surely Bing won't mind using her word spirit to grant a few of his requests. Instantly, Jiang Tianming stiffens, haunted by memories of that humiliating dance she once forced on them with just her words. "You're cheating," he blurts. Watching it unfold, viewers are cracking up. So that's how he won? Classic twist? Is he really gonna rat him out to Bing Bing? That's what he gets for showing off. Laughter floods the comment section. Not a fan war in sight, just pure chaotic joy, something not every comic can keep alive. Thanks to the rare harmony among fans, discussions about the plot flowed freely, even from those who didn't support specific characters, finally. No constant flame wars. Subei's eyes gleamed when he saw the manga include his bold prediction of Jiang Tianming's win. If that moment made it in, then his earlier declaration before the fight probably would too. 2 predictions spot on? That would definitely explode across the forums, and if not, Subei would post it himself. He kept reading. The semifinals were Subei versus Si Zhaohua and Jiang Tianming versus Lan Subing. Both matchups were hotly anticipated, one for its inner circle drama, the other for the mystery surrounding Subei and the clear power of Si Zhaohua. Naturally, Subei's group went up first. This was the first time readers got to see Si Zhaohua go all out, and just the way his feathered blades were drawn showed his deadly strength. Subei didn't hold back either, but this time he didn't dominate Si Zhaohua's airborne attacks, pushed him to showcase flawless evasive maneuvers. Still, Subei's gears weren't just flashy props. If they were weak, Si Zhaohua wouldn't be folding his wings every time. With both fighters using similar styles, the battlefield looked like a war zone, chaotic, intense, and utterly electrifying. As Si Zhaohua launched his first strike, sending feathers with deadly precision that struck Subei off guard, the crowd exploded with excitement. This is what the world of ability users is really like. So impressive, they cheered. This battle between these 2 titans is making my heart race, someone else shouted. They're both so handsome, another remarked. Subei has this kind of skill? How did he even train for it? One fan questioned. Wow, battle damage? Others gasped. The artist nailed it with his full-page spread showing Subei's beauty, one observer noted. A beauty covered in battle scars? Those bloodstains look amazing, someone added. Subei quickly turned off the comments and skipped to the next page. By then, the story had shifted to Subei's failed first plan. Si Zhaohua was holding back his true power. Staying one step ahead, a comment read, "He can even see through his wings? That seems unbeatable," another user exclaimed. Too bad. Subei had a solid plan, but in the end, the stronger one prevailed, someone concluded. Subei wasn't done yet. He dodged relentlessly, eyes sharp, and struck back without mercy. Then came his risky second plan, let himself get hurt just enough to snatch a feather and secretly tuck a gear beneath it. When the feathers returned to Si Zhaohua, that hidden gear floated with them. The manga zoomed in on that very feather, revealing a faint glint of metal through the slit. Subei's next move. A double gear strike 1, a mere graze. The second, a punishing blow. His thoughts laid bare in scattered speech bubbles. The trap snapped shut. Si Zhaohua's wings closed. His body trembled, and he plummeted like a fallen god. Readers went wild, shocked, thrilled, praising Subei's brilliance and declaring loyalty. But when the wings parted, Si Zhaohua was only grazed on the chin. Still, his pale face and drenched hair betrayed the fear carved into him. The next panel flashed back to that split-second strike inside the wings, as if the manga itself couldn't let go of what just happened. Subei didn't back down. He kept dodging and striking with full force. Then he came up with a bold second plan. He let himself get injured just to grab a feather and sneak a gear into it. When Si Zhaohua summoned the feathers back, that hidden gear floated with them. The manga zoomed in on that feather, revealing a glimpse of metal through the slit. Subei struck twice, first a graze, then a hard blow, his thoughts narrating the clever setup. When Si Zhaohua groaned and dropped from the sky like a fallen deity, the readers exploded with praise, cheering for the brilliant strategy and Subei's genius. But when the wings unfolded, Si Zhaohua only had a cut on his chin, yet his pale, drenched face showed he'd been rattled. The next panel flashed back to what had really happened inside those closed wings. Subei glanced at the flood of comments, some cheering for a different ship, others proudly declaring his dominance, and nearly passed out from secondhand embarrassment. But at least, he told himself, shipping wars were better than flame wars. Shutting the comments off again, he tried to regain composure. Meanwhile, the match between Jiang Tianming and Lan Subing kicked off and ended in a flash. Jiang, already familiar with her powers, gagged her with a flying handkerchief and promptly pushed her out of the ring. Compared to Subei's drawn-out duel, their clash felt like a skipped panel. As expected, the manga still milked Jiang's victory with a dramatic pause. During the intermission, before the final round, Jiang and his teammates surrounded Subei, questioning why he hadn't used his power to tilt the match. Naturally, the manga made a scene out of it. The blonde boy's smirk was cutting, but whether the mockery was for his rival or himself was hard to read in those violet eyes. "Ever heard the phrase, 'a doctor cannot heal himself'?" he said coolly, before walking off. The comment section lit up again, now speculating about Subei's cryptic past and what, exactly, he couldn't heal. Jiang Tianming's secret power of object control, a gift from the final boss of Volume 1, had stayed hidden through Season 1 until Subei finally caught on. The match's outcome was clear, and for once, Jiang Tianming let his guard down, smugly throwing an arm around Wu Mingbai's shoulder, showing off his win. But Wu Mingbai wasn't mad instead. He calmly suggested using Bing's word spirit power to fulfill some of his own requests, catching Jiang Tianming off guard as he remembered the chaos that ability once caused. "You're cheating," he blurted, frozen in fear. The audience erupted with laughter, teasing him for bragging too soon and praising the unexpected twist. No arguments broke out among the fans, just joy and reminders of past plot lines. A rare and refreshing scene in the world of competitive fandom. He could barely dodge as blows rained down, wounds piling up fast, but years of fighting taught Jiang Tianming to guard his vital spots, never letting himself fall completely. Bleeding but unyielding, he endured. Overhead, Si Zhaohua hovered cautiously, refusing to land, but the tide turned when his energy, already drained from battling Su Bei, ran dry. Without the strength to unleash his ultimate move, he faltered. That's when Jiang Tianming struck. Using the same sneaky method he'd once used on another foe, he tried to control his opponent's powers, but feathers were trickier than sand. Still, he marked them one by one through the pain, waiting. When Zhaohua finally drew his feathers back, Jiang Tianming unleashed his trap, landing a brutal hit. Though Zhaohua shielded his core, the fall left him open, and Jiang Tianming was ready. He knocked him out clean. It was smart, it was gritty, and it was a mess. Watching them both wrecked, Su Bei couldn't tell who looked worse, the guy covered in cuts or the one betrayed by his own wings. The tension broke in the next scene, with Zhaohua waking up and tossing out a new challenge. Su Bei finished reading and let out a breath. Nice. He had a feeling his power-up was just a page away. The manga awareness blinked in confusion when asked about an upgrade, missing the clue that Su Bei had already reshaped his power behind the scenes by twisting the forum's belief. With a calm grin, Su Bei pointed out that being called the top martial artist among the freshmen would stick, locking his status into the story unless someone stronger popped up to rewrite it. Then he leaned back, asking if people watching him control the gears would think it was mental force or an innate ability. Of course, they'd assume it was his own power, never guessing he'd just rewritten the cost of using it. Now he could spin those gears freely, spending far less effort than before, while the reader stayed convinced it was always meant to be this way. As the realization dawned on the manga awareness, Su Bei checked the forum again exactly as expected, post after post burning bright with chatter about the chapter's twists. Scrolling down, he noticed a post about himself and clicked without a second thought. The title claimed it was a ranking of student combat power, full of subjective guesses and a warning not to argue. It listed him along with others, placing Jiang Tianming first, then Si Zhaohua with an ultimate move, and him right after. Some wondered if the rankings were biased, others laughed at the multiple versions, and a few questioned strange entries like Wu Jin's mutated form. The comments rolled on, debating if Jiang Tianming really deserved the top spot or if it was just fan praise. In the latest ranking debate, some argue that Jiang Tianming's position is inflated, pointing out that without the protagonist halo, his rank feels too high. Others suggest that there should be two versions of his ranking. One showing all his hidden skills, and another just focusing on his basic abilities. While some believe the protagonist's potential will grow, they feel he's not quite at the top yet. The ranking of Qi Huang raises eyebrows too, with one commenter questioning why she's so high up, barely remembering her character. However, the real controversy comes when Jiang Tianming's name hits the #1 spot. Critics slam the ranking for its lack of fairness, questioning how someone reliant on the dead could top the list. Yet some fans defend Jiang Tianming passionately, telling critics that if they can't handle him, they should stop reading the series altogether. Fine. Since everyone's jumping in, one of them snaps and vows to rank characters by looks next. But another argues that floor 145 rankings without considering abilities feel too subjective. Many haven't even shown their real combat skills. Someone points out characters like the ink wrap tactician, the cold strategist, the illusionist, and the silent enforcer have never had direct fights, so looks alone can't be the metric. A reply agrees with the top placement so far. The enforcer's close combat ability is unconfirmed, so leaving him out makes sense. The reality warping girl's lower rank seems fair too. People call her weak, but she once kicked a boss into oblivion. The smooth dodger's placement fits. He evaded attacks during a fight with the enforcer, maybe thanks to his air block sensing power. No point ranking the tactician he hasn't fought. The prophet without powers? Weak in raw strength, but someone claims he has hidden potential. The strategist hasn't shown close combat either, while the tech twins actually fought and won, so they deserve a higher rank. The illusionist at the bottom? Understandable. And finally, someone impatiently asks, where's that appearance ranking already? In a lively forum discussion, the community gets heated over rankings and character abilities. One user, known as Happy Potato, explains the power of Chi Huang, describing her Flame Phoenix ability as a destructive force, suggesting she'll be prominent in the story ahead. Meanwhile, Happy Potato isn't shy about expressing their frustration with those who dislike the main characters, calling them out in a fiery reply. Others join in, some laughing at the boldness of the original post and others agreeing with the rankings, while a few propose alternative lists based solely on raw physical strength, leaving the abilities aside. Different perspectives mix in, adding layers to the ongoing debate. Fine, if everyone's doing it, he's gonna rank them by looks soon. But someone thinks those floor 145 rankings based on appearance are too subjective anyway. After all, a lot of characters haven't even shown their real fighting abilities in the manga. Characters like that mysterious group barely any hand-to-hand action to judge them properly. One person agrees with the top picks though, pointing out that excluding the unpredictable Si Hua makes sense since his combat level is still a mystery. Lan Subing ranking lower seems fair too, though some folks clearly forget how she took down a boss back in Volume 1 with a single kick. Mo Xiaotian? Makes sense his dodges in that fight with Si Hua were slick, and maybe his air block ability lets him sense attacks from all sides. As for Chi Huang and Feng Lan, well, no real combat scenes, though Subi Ei seems to think Feng Lan's got potential. Zhou Renji? Still no close combat there either, so people are putting Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin ahead of him since they've actually won fights. Ai Baozhu at the bottom? Seems like everyone agrees on that one. And now everyone's waiting for that looks-based list to drop any time now. In a manga world unraveling at the seams, Subi Ei steps into chaos as the new narrative axis, no longer a mere villain or sidekick, but a reality-bending wildcard whose every move reshapes the story panels themselves, except this rewriting comes at a cost, triggering glitches, ink storms, and forgotten timelines that claw their way back into existence. As allies become NPCs and old enemies reawaken, Lan Subing spirals under the weight of her warping words. Feng Lan's reverse prophecies lead them astray, and Wu Mingbai relives betrayal in a cursed loop, until Subi Ei dives into the origin draft, a sketchy proto-world of unfinished ink where he faces Beta Subi Ei, his forgotten comedic self, and must fuse with that unpowered innocence to unlock the authorless gear. A final unwritten force, capable of rebooting a collapsing manga reality. After the release of the latest chapter, fans began discussing the characters, and it didn't take long for opinions to flood in. One fan mentioned that, aside from their emotional attachment to a certain female character, all the women in the story were beautiful. Another fan pointed out that there simply weren't enough gorgeous women and urged the author to draw more. The conversation shifted when someone brought up Wu Jin, speculating that his face, often hidden, could reveal a heartthrob if his hair were pushed back. This sparked curiosity in others, with one fan even wondering if Wu Jin would look even more striking than the already handsome male characters. Another fan humorously added that sometimes the appeal of a character is more about the concept than the artwork itself. Despite all the buzz, Subei's attention was far from the discussion on others. His main focus was solely on the feedback surrounding his own character. Subi Ei scans through the posts, noting the positive buzz around him. However, one comment about Wu Jin catches his eye. If the fans hadn't mentioned it, he might have overlooked it, but the speculation about Wu Jin's mysterious charm reminds him of those classic manga moments where a character's true allure is hidden behind a subtle gesture. Should he try to win Wu Jin over? After some thought, Subi Ei decides against it. Wu Jin's strength in the manga makes him a bit wary, and maintaining some distance seems like the safer bet. Moving on, Subi Ei finds himself scrolling through a thread that devolves into ranking appearances, before exiting and continuing his search. Among the trending posts, most are just fangirls shipping him with other characters, but one post stands out. Is it just me, or did Subei's match with Si Xiaohua seem a bit too rushed? Curious, he clicks. Inside, fans debate whether Si Xiaohua's narrow win was just luck or a part of Subei's strategy. The argument sparks a bigger discussion. Isn't all of this just the author's plan? The world's unraveling fast. Subei's no longer a side note, but the wild card at the center of it all, reshaping fate itself. But rewriting the rules has consequences. Glitching panels, ink storms, and storylines collapsing into oblivion. Memory, erasing fog sweeps through the academy, turning friends into blank slates. Old villains crawl back from scrapped timelines, dripping with narrative ink, while Subei learns the ghost author was just one fragment of a greater threat. As reality cracks, allies falter, Su Bing loses control of her voice, rewriting others by accident. Feng Lan's prophecies run backward, flipping fate on its head. Wu Mingbai spirals into a cursed loop of betrayal. To stop it all, Subei dives into the manga's first draft, facing his forgotten self, Beta Subei, the powerless comic relief he used to be. Only by fusing with this innocent version can he forge a new power with no written destiny, the authorless gear. The final page turns not with fate's hand, but his. One commenter grumbles about the flood of pointless words. Another starts reading more carefully. Then someone begins to suspect the original poster might be onto something. The debate heats up. Was the victory just luck? Did Subei lose on purpose? The original poster hints that something doesn't add up, and others begin to agree. Suspicion grows as they recall how Subei used to predict outcomes flawlessly. Eventually, the consensus shifts. Subei didn't lose because he had to, but because he chose to, though his reasons remain a mystery. Subei faced off against Si Xiaohua in their final clash, but the moment Si Xiaohua folded his wings, everything vanished from sight. Subei was completely blind to what was happening inside. With no clue where his opponent stood, his attacks were mere guesses, doomed to miss. The odds? Normally just a 30% chance of failure. But this was no ordinary world here. Narrative fate twisted the rules, ensuring Subei's shot missed with absolute certainty, because the script demanded Si Xiaohua face someone else in the end. Forum readers, unaware of this hidden hand, drew their own theories, and Subei loved it. Their mistaken belief that he lost on purpose? Much better than thinking he couldn't win. With a smirk, he agreed to stoke the fire further. He'd post, alright, why not ride the wave of public favor? But instead of a fanboy's gush about his own power, he rewrote the title to look like a deep dive analysis of multiple characters, hiding his identity behind layers of casual insight. That way, readers would pay closer attention, spotting the breadcrumbs he'd scattered, never suspecting they'd been guided by the very hand they thought was just another fan. Subei faced off against Si Xiaohua in a crucial clash, but once Si Xiaohua's wings closed, everything inside vanished from view. He had no idea where his opponent was, and firing blindly meant guaranteed failure. In truth, though, this was more than just bad luck. It was the author's doing. Normally, he might have had a 30% chance of missing, but in this manga's predestined world, where the final battle was reserved for someone else, his miss rate was rigged to 100%. The readers, unaware of this manipulation, spun their own wild theories, and Subei loved it. A smirk played on his lips as he thought their guesses were impressively creative. Instead of believing he couldn't win, they assumed he threw the match on purpose, a twist that served him well. As forum discussions began favoring this narrative, manga awareness nudged him. Was he going to post something? Of course he was. Things were going smoothly, no need to correct the chatter, but there was always room to stir the pot. He launched a new thread, planning to dive into ideas like his mental strength and control over fate, aiming to steer readers' attention where he wanted. But just before hitting post, he changed the title too much. Focus on himself would raise suspicion. Instead, he framed it as a broad analysis of the author's foreshadowing across all characters, masking his intent and drawing everyone in. Subei faced Si Xiaohua in a final showdown, but once those wings closed, he was completely in the dark, literally. He had no way of knowing where Si Xiaohua was hiding, so shooting blindly meant a near certain miss. But this wasn't just a normal world. It was a manga built on destined matchups and author tweaks. Normally, Subei had a decent shot, but this time, the script had already decided he'd miss no matter what. Forum readers, oblivious to this behind-the-scenes setup, came up with their own theories, and they actually worked in Subei's favor. They guessed he'd thrown the match on purpose. A way better story than he just couldn't win. Watching the forums tilt the narrative in his favor, Subei grinned, totally unbothered. When the manga awareness asked if he'd post something, he didn't hesitate. Of course he would. The buzz didn't need tweaking, but it could use some extra spice. So he fired up a new thread, aiming to steer fans toward thinking deeper about hidden strength, mysterious mental power, and the idea that maybe, just maybe, Subei was controlling more than anyone thought. He almost named a thread after himself, then paused, deleted it, and gave it a broader title. No need to tip his hand too, obviously. Better to act like just another reader seeing patterns in the ink. Subei didn't usually pick favorites, he focused more on the plot than the characters, which made his observations unusually sharp on the forum. After the solo battles ended, the self-styled prophet number 0 began pointing out narrative hints. 3 shadowy figures with unclear identities and powers, one of whom might be tied to Jiang Tianming, plus an origin mystery that could connect to a family silhouette. Wu Mingbai hinted at being sealed, while Lan Subing and Mo Xiaotian hadn't revealed much, though their emotional arcs felt like setup. Mu Tiren's rapid growth raised suspicion, and Subei's own unusually high mental strength, mysterious reason for joining Class F, and unclear restraint in his battle with Si Xiaohua made him especially suspect. Feng Lan's Class F transfer might be linked to him or the main group, and Meng Huai's demotion from Class S teacher added to the strange mix. The prophet subtly included himself, making his deductions almost rival Jiang Tianming's knowledge. After the post, Subei returned to his strange compass experiment, using his phone in a mere 10 rounds of a card game revealed a pattern. When the small dial pointed left, he'd win. When it leaned right, he'd lose. After regaining some strength, he dove into the game, curious to see how fate would mess things up even if he played smart. He started strong with a straight, then carefully played smaller cards, narrowing his hand down to just a pair of 2s and a pair of 5s. His moment had come. Confidently, he went to play the pair of 5s, but just as he tapped, his pinky slipped and dropped a single 5 instead. A sharp hiss escaped him, but he stayed calm. No big deal, he still had a 5 and a pair of 2s. He'd chosen to play the 5s first because there was still a bomb card unplayed. Technically, victory was still possible. But deep down, he knew that blunder had wrecked his chances. If he could mess up a sure win, how slim were the odds now? And just as expected, he lost. Leaning back, he replayed the loss in his head, realizing he'd misjudged the difficulty. Even with good cards, failure came easy. The absurd part? Of all the ways fate could make him lose, it chose a silly mistap right at the finish line. Yet, strangely, he wasn't mad. Something just clicked. Subei sat back at the gaming table, curiosity burning behind his calm eyes. He wasn't just playing to win, he wanted to see how fate would rig the game if he played it perfectly. He started off strong with a straight, then tactically chipped away with low cards, narrowing his hand down to a pair of 2s and a pair of 5s. Victory seemed within reach. But just as he tapped to play the 5s, his pinky betrayed him, slipping out a single 5 instead. He winced but regrouped, he still had a chance. He'd avoided the 2s because he knew someone was holding a bomb. Now, though, that minor slip had wrecked his rhythm. His gut told him the win was gone. And he was right. He lost. Leaning back, Subei replayed it in his head. Stunned, not by the loss, but by how ridiculous it was. Out of all the ways fate could have struck, it chose a clumsy tap. And somehow, instead of anger, all he felt was clarity. Flat on his bed, he regained his mental strength while mulling over his newly awakened ability, subtle tweaks to reality, limited to once a day and only for insignificant outcomes. Anything more? That'd knock him out cold. Curious, he pulled up his latest forum post and found it buzzing with replies. Someone finally noticed the author's clever clues. Another admitted to being completely confused. Someone else hinted at a mysterious backstory. And a few users debated whether things were wrapping up now that the individual matches had ended. As the world within the manga spirals into chaos, the final matches and looming exams feel like the least of anyone's concerns. While some believe the team battles are just for bonding, others can't ignore the eerie silence swallowing the original poster's warnings. Echoes of forgotten timelines return, dragging old antagonists back from the scrap heap of discarded arcs. Amid the rising ink storms and glitching panels, fears grow around Lan Subing and Mo Xiaotian's fate. Nobody wants to see them fall, but destiny's already fraying. As doubts clash with denial, one voice insists the OP's guesses are reckless. But maybe, just maybe, they're the only ones still reading the story right. The thread spirals into comic chaos as one user dramatically calls the OP a prophet, sparking confusion and intrigue. Another suddenly realizes this might actually be true, while a third cluelessly wonders what the prophecy is even about. A fourth chimes in, suggesting they dig through the OP's past posts for answers. Just when things seem weird enough, someone begs the mysterious author to stop toying with their brain. Then a cryptic voice drops another twist. There's a Riddler lurking in the main thread but refuses to name names, prompting someone else to vent about how maddening Riddlers are always spouting nonsense and mystery. Subei, the ever-enigmatic wildcard, has readers guessing whether his mental powers are being stretched to the limit behind the scenes. Some dismiss the speculation, insisting they read without overthinking. But others suspect that Subei's ability to alter fate itself must demand immense psychic effort, especially since glimpses of his power surfaced only during pivotal upgrades or accidental revelations. As discussions heat up, fans agree if fate is being bent, it's costing him dearly. Meanwhile, with the team tournament on the horizon, Jiang Tianming's squad reunites, determined not to stumble over each other in the chaos to come. Mo Xiaotian breaks the silence first, revealing his explosive air-manipulating ability. Subei finally understood how the explosions worked, just as Mo Xiaotian, who had been keeping a low profile, drew surprised looks from those unfamiliar with his abilities. Lan Subing, eyes wide, questioned whether he could really make air explode and how powerful it was. Mo Xiaotian shrugged, unimpressed by his own strength, then demonstrated by summoning a block of air laced with sand to reveal its shape. Subei, ever curious, asked if this could be used to suffocate an enemy, and the group's collective realization lit up the room, an efficient tactic against any breathing opponent. But Mo Xiaotian deflated the excitement, explaining that while he could manipulate air pressure, the block itself became immobile, letting targets escape with a simple step. Just then, the sand inside the block hovered in eerie stillness. He calmly announced it was primed to detonate and asked if anyone dared try it. Silence. Everyone stepped back. At the edge of the group, Subei silently observed Mo Xiaotian's quirky behavior, wondering how someone so naive could belong to the infamous Black Lightning. That mark on his neck wasn't just decoration. But before too much was said, Jiang Tianming jumped in to change the subject, claiming his ability was object control. He could move things depending on their weight. Mo Xiaotian, ever curious, flailed his arm and asked if people counted. Jiang explained he could only control someone unconscious, not awake, making it sound like a toned-down version of telekinesis. Of course, he kept the best part secret. His power could mess with others' abilities, but he wasn't about to broadcast that. Then Wu Mingbai calmly shared he had earth element powers, enough to whip up dirt or even stone now, not much mystery there. Mutirin, always the loud one, flexed his physical enhancement with a grin and challenged Subei to a sparring match. But Subei, the undisputed king of avoiding effort, didn't even blink before shooting him down with a flat number. On the outskirts of the group, Subei quietly observed as Mo Xiaotian flailed with childlike curiosity, leaving Subei baffled by how someone like him could belong to Black Lightning. That innocent energy didn't fit the profile of an undercover agent. Just as things threatened to get too revealing, Jiang Tianming cut in with a calm flex. His power was object control. The heavier the object, the harder it was to move. Mo Xiaoshan, still buzzing, asked if that meant Jiang could control a person. Only if they're out cold, came the answer. Not exactly comforting. Jiang played it safe, keeping the best part of his power, a hidden ability to control others' powers, off the table. Then Wu Mingbai shared his simple earth-based ability, now upgraded to create stone, but also kept it vague, smartly dodging any deep reveals. Finally, Mutirin flashed his muscle-boosting grin at Subei, offering a friendly fight. Subei, ever the master of avoiding effort, gave him a flat number. He had two reasons: wasting energy on a meaningless spar and risking defeat weren't worth it. Even if he matched Mutirin in strength, a single loss could shatter his title as the top freshman fighter, and he wasn't about to gamble his reputation. Mutirin, unfazed by the refusal, simply sighed and flexed. He could now lift 6 times his weight, a feat unheard of even among powered individuals. What shocked everyone wasn't just the number, but the fact he pulled it off with an F-class ability. Then came Lan Subing, who quietly revealed her ability, Voice Command, which lets her words become reality, except her social anxiety turns her power into a double-edged sword. Silencing her when crowds gather, Su Bei found the irony sharp and clever. When it was finally his turn, he summoned a glowing gear and declared his ability, Gear of Destiny, allowing him to control gears and glimpse fate, but clearly he wasn't telling the whole story. Everyone sensed it, but since all were hiding secrets, no one spoke. Jiang Tianming cleared his throat, proposing a plan for tomorrow's unknown team battle. They might have to split up. With 6 people ready, the idea to pair up sparked instant agreement. Wu Mingbai matched with Lan Subing, his earthen wall shielding her so her voice ability could work undisturbed. Jiang Tianming teamed with Mu Tirin, while Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian formed a complementary duo of physical and mental skill. After forming teams, Jiang Tianming extended his hand with a grin, good luck in the team competition, and everyone stacked their hands with a unified cheer. The next morning at 7, all freshmen gathered on the field, backpacks in place, each holding just a bottle of water and tissue paper exactly as instructed. The team competition was about to begin. But they weren't alone. Upperclassmen, dressed similarly but in different hues, had returned, forming a silent audience around the field. Watching with quiet judgment, they circled the freshmen like spectators at a zoo, murmuring especially around F-class. Though exact rankings were unknown, their presence on the final day had made waves. Most felt awkward under the attention, except Lan Subing, who struggled under the invisible weight of every stare. Sensing her discomfort, Jiang Tianming and Wu Mingbai casually stepped in front of her. Su Bei, sharp-eared as always, picked up whispers from the crowd. Doubt about A, classes fall. Blame on the school for misplacing powerful students. That test machine must be outdated, but no one really cared, because all eyes were on the dazzling newcomers. Blonde, white, black, brown. It felt like a dating sim had come to life. One voice joked about the whole thing turning into a harem selection, even tossing out the idea of trying a little sister-brother romance. Su Bei blinked and mentally hit mute. Just then, the first-year dean arrived, exactly the kind of stern, tight-bunned, glasses-wearing authority figure he expected. Rumor had it her power, teaching and learning, could transfer skills like magic. Rack up enough points and you could even cash in a tutoring session with her. Without much ceremony, the instructor dropped a bomb. They'd all be tossed into an alternate space. The room buzzed. Alternate spaces were nightmare zones, literal backdoors for chaos. But this one, they were told, was sanitized. Plus, each student would get a break glass to escape watch automated if things got deadly. That outdated test machine clearly wasn't ready for the flood of fresh drama, because the moment the new students walked in, blonde, white-haired, black, brown, it looked like a scene straight out of an Otome game. Someone in the crowd joked about trying out a little sibling romance storyline, but Su Bei just blinked, stone-faced, pretending the weird didn't just happen. Then came the first-year dean's turn, composed and rumored to wield a power called teaching and learning, which could help anyone master new abilities. Not just powerful, practical, too. A tutoring session with her was a hot ticket reward. Without missing a beat, she announced their first group event. They'd be heading into an alternate space. Gasps rippled through the room. Those spaces were where nightmares entered the world. But no need to panic, she reassured them. This one had been cleared of danger, and every student would get a special watch, break it, or face fatal peril, and it would instantly teleport them out. Trained by his father in survival skills, he knew the terrain wouldn't pose much of a challenge. His team, led by strong members, was well prepared for anything. When Director Lee explained the rules, she raised her hand and a dark gate appeared beside the platform. "When I call your team leader's name, step through the gate," she said. "You'll be transported to a random location in the alternate space." As soon as Jiang Tianming's name was called, he led his team of 6 into the dark gate. They stepped through without feeling dizzy, only to emerge in a dense, silent forest. The trees towered over them, blocking out the sunlight, and there was an unsettling quiet. No birds, only the rustling of leaves. Su Bei observed the surroundings carefully, sensing something unnatural about the place, as if it was a realm where nightmares thrived and consumed all life. Checking his watch, He saw a map with red dots marking his teammates and a green one for himself. With the area seemingly safe, he turned to his group, ready for whatever came next. Jiang Tianming, taking the lead, said, "Let's stick together for now and see if we encounter any tasks or dangers." The group stood in silence, tension clinging to the air as they prepared to split into yesterday's teams. Again, no objections, just a quiet nod from all. Even the usually composed Su Bei couldn't promise safety in this unpredictable forest. Amid the unease, one figure burst with excitement, bright red hair blazing like fire. Mo Xiaoxin spun around gleefully, marveling at the fresh air like he'd stumbled into paradise. "This is my first time in a big forest," he beamed. Wu Mingbai smirked. "You think this is a vacation?" But Mo Xiaoxin, totally unfazed, lit up even more. "You're right, it's like a free school trip." The others were speechless. Was he serious? Yet, despite themselves, their shared smiles betrayed relief. His foolishness worked like magic. Mu Tiran chuckled, "Well, he's not wrong. Let's call it a spring outing." And with that, they stepped into the unknown, smiles hiding the storm ahead. In a world where the very fabric of reality is unstable, a group of unlikely adventurers stumbles upon a strange stone tablet hidden deep in the wild. At first glance, it seems like just another relic, but the screen on its surface flickers to life, presenting a daunting mission. A challenge awaits. Eliminate 5 terrifying creatures known as nightmares, with a reward of points, medical supplies, and self-heating hot pots. As they debate the value of the reward, the group faces a tough decision. Do they take on this dangerous task, knowing that they can't accept other missions until it's completed? The weight of uncertainty hangs over them, and the silent tension is palpable. In the end, the desire for a possible fortune outweighs the risks, but the question remains, is the reward worth the peril? In the heart of the jungle, a group of determined individuals pushed through dense grass and tangled vines. Their mission: to uncover the mysterious object mentioned by one of their own. After navigating the thick foliage, they arrived at a stone tablet. This wasn't just any stone, it had a display screen. As one of them approached and tapped it, a mission prompt appeared. Mission 14, eliminate 5 nightmares. Reward: 500 points, 3 bandages, and 3 self-heating hot pots. The catch? Only the team leader could accept the mission by tapping their watch on the screen, and once accepted, no other missions could be taken until this one was completed. The group paused, contemplating. Was 500 points worth the perilous task of slaying 5 nightmares? The silence was thick with uncertainty. They had no prior reference for the reward's value. The leaderboard was empty, leaving them to make a choice without any comparison. Would they dive in head first, or wait for a clearer path? The decision wasn't easy, but the potential reward was too tempting to ignore. Jiang Tianming quickly came up with a plan. Let's split into teams like we discussed. We'll stay here to decide if we'll take the mission while you check out other areas. If you find anything new, send someone back to update us. Our locations are marked on the map. It was a solid idea, but Wu Mingbai raised a concern. What if we split up and run into another group that's still together? Su Bei spoke up. You and Mo Xiaotian can manipulate the terrain. In a forest like this, just a little delay and the enemy won't be able to catch up. If they couldn't win, they could always escape. With that, the group split into pairs. Wu Mingbai and Su Bei each took a teammate and headed in different directions. Before they left, Su Bei checked the compass above everyone's heads and called out to Wu Mingbai. Wu Mingbai changed direction. He noticed Wu Mingbai's compass needle pointing a little to the left, showing no good chances in that direction. Wu Mingbai and Lan Subing exchanged a look, then adjusted their course. How about now? Trusting Su Bei's ability to see fate and knowing they were on the same team, they followed his advice without hesitation. When the needle shifted sharply to the left, Su Bei gave a satisfied nod. Okay. Seeing this, Wu Mingbai beamed with a bright smile. Thanks! Su Bei didn't respond, leading Mo Xiaotian off in a random direction. Hey, brother Bei! If Mingbai's path wasn't good, does that mean ours is perfect? Mo Xiaoshan asked, skipping ahead through the forest. Truthfully, Su Bei hadn't checked. There was no way to pull out his precious mirror and glance at the compass overhead in this situation. But, with teammates, he could always check the compass above theirs. It's decent, he answered casually. He wasn't lying. The pointer above their heads only tilted slightly to the left. As part of the protagonist group, they wouldn't be outright eliminated, so nearly any result was considered decent. Of course, he hadn't intentionally picked a subpar path, it was just that, during their earlier walk, he had subtly tested the other routes. Apart from the one he had sent Wu Mingbai on, the others were fairly average. The reason for that path choice? To solidify his reputation as someone with predictive powers. Besides, as long as they weren't eliminated, none of the paths could be too bad. Mo Xiaotian, full of curiosity, quickly shifted the conversation, asking, "Brother BEI, how did you spot that stone tablet earlier?" Su BEI, with a mischievous grin, casually responded, "I have some special perception tricks." He then steered the topic away, suggesting that Mo Xiaotian's ability to control air should grant him strong sensory abilities. Though still innocent, Mo Xiaotian wasn't naive and realized Su BEI couldn't have seen the stone tablet from where he stood earlier. Embarrassed, Mo Xiaotian admitted that his control was still limited, but he could sense a small area with great precision, allowing him to create air blocks or explosive cubes. Su BEI, sensing Mo Xiaotian's honesty, relaxed, knowing he wasn't fishing for information but simply curious. Yet, he remained cautious, knowing Mo Xiaotian's ties to a mysterious organization. Whatever he learned here would eventually reach them, and that thought lingered in Su Bei's mind as he studied Mo Xiaotian, so unaware of his own chaos, like a living glitch in the manga panel. Danger wasn't always drawn in sharp ink. Sometimes it came with a smile and good intentions. Su Bei suddenly froze, whispering, "Someone's ahead," halting Mo Xiaotian mid-chatter. They dropped into the grass, eyes fixed on six figures moving about 20 meters away, too many for a fair fight. Stealth trumped pride. The two melted into the brush, silent beneath towering trees, shadows merging with the forest ink. "Move!" Su Bei ordered under his breath, and they crept behind another trunk just in time. The group passed their old hiding spot, and at the lead was someone they recognized. Mo Xiaotian's eyes bulged. He grabbed Su Bei's sleeve, mouthing words like bold text. "It's Qi Huang!" Sure enough, she marched ahead, commanding 6 girls through the forest maze. But then they stopped. Right where Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian had just vanished. The girl with green braids adjusted her glasses with a sharp glint, her tone dead serious. Something had just passed through here. Qi Huang didn't miss a beat, trusting her teammates' senses. What was it, and how many? If it was a small group, human or nightmare, they could take them. Eyes closed, breath held, the green-haired girl focused humans. Not many. Qi Huang's confident smirk returned. Another team, and maybe a chance at scoring points. She turned to the brown-haired girl Chi-Chi, tracked them. That single command sent a chill down Su Bei's spine. This team had a tracker. Her face darkened, and beside her, Mo Xiaotian mouthed in panic run? But they both knew better. Qi Huang's power, Flame Phoenix, was a death sentence. In the forest, fighting fire was bad, but fleeing from it? Impossible. Su Bei kept quiet, eyes locked on the brown-haired girl as she sniffed the air like a predator tracking invisible prey. Then, a spark of thought lit up his mind. "I have an idea," he whispered. Mo Xiaotian, visibly pale, trembled beside him. "Will this really work?" he asked, voice nearly cracking. Su Bei simply mouthed, "Don't worry," his gaze flicking to the compass above Mo Xiaotian's head, where the needle had now veered sharply left proof his plan was in motion. With renewed confidence, Mo Xiaotian fell silent, clutching tightly to Su Bei's calm like a lifeline. The brown-haired girl paused, sniffed again, and then made a beeline straight for them. Tension spiked, but Mo Xiaotian didn't break. Su Bei's composure held them together. The group stopped just short of their hiding place. She sniffed again, frowning. "The scent ends here," she muttered. "Ends? How is that possible?" Another girl blurted out, stunned. "This has never happened before, right?" Qi Huang frowned slightly as she turned to the girl with brown hair. "Can you make sense of this? If not, I'll just burn the place down." It was a clever plan, really. The dense forest provided perfect cover, but a fire would leave no place to hide. For Su Bei, who was the one hiding, it was no joke. Luckily, Chi-Chi, the brown-haired girl, stopped her. "There's no need. No one's here. The scent disappearing so suddenly likely means they used the teleportation ability." The green-haired girl added, "We don't need to start a fire. It could attract other teams and even put us in danger." Normally, she'd also mention how it would damage the environment, but since they were in another space, that didn't matter here. Chi Huang nodded, agreeing with the concerns, then turned back to Chi-Chi. Are you sure no one's here? Chi-Chi nodded firmly. I'm sure. In the tense moments after the arena matches, one team leader kept her strategy hidden, knowing no one could have prepared for it. As she suspected, her tracking ability had gone unnoticed, leaving her opponents with no way to dodge it. Realizing they'd already fled, she turned to her group, disappointment creeping in. They ran off too fast. No one to eliminate here. Let's find the next task. After they left, one of her allies let out a sigh of relief and turned to his companion, excitement in his voice. Brother, you're amazing. They really didn't find us. He pulled out the air blocks he'd created, baffled. I didn't expect these to block Chi-Chi's tracking. Can air really stop her ability? His sharp mind had already pieced things together. Even without understanding how Chi-Chi's power worked, he had observed enough to guess. Subi nodded and explained. Chi-Chi's tracking relies on scent. By using fresh air, you blocked her scent trail, cutting off her ability to track us. Mo Xiaoshan's eyes lit up. I get it now, but how did you know her ability was scent-based? Subi gave a faint smile but kept quiet. He wouldn't admit that he'd already figured everything out by noticing Chi-Chi's sniffing earlier, realizing her ability in an instant. If this were a manga, it would show him piecing the puzzle together through careful observation. If not, he could always let Mo Xiaotian explain it. Either way, he wasn't losing anything. What's our next move? Mo Xiaotian asked, now relaxed but a little unsure. Subi thought for a moment. We'll follow Chi Huang's group. There might be an opportunity to use their actions to our advantage. Also, make sure to set up your air blocks in front of us when tracking them so Chi-Chi won't catch our scent. Mo Xiaotian jumped up excitedly. Great! Let's follow them! Spy movies are the best! Subi rolled his eyes. Just don't start acting like it's a James Bond film, he muttered, watching Mo Xiaotian strike over-the-top poses. Then, Subi frowned, realizing something else. Can your mental energy last this long? He remembered how pale Mo Xiaotian looked when he had set up the air blocks earlier, still not fully recovered. Subi was already on edge, worrying he'd run out of energy halfway through, when Mo Xiaotian's face twisted into dramatic despair like he just remembered how doomed they were. Still, he managed to mumble a plan. If he just blocked the front and they stuck close, he might survive. Subi, keeping a casual pace behind Chi Huang's group, asked how close he meant. That lit Mo Xiaotian up like a cartoon light bulb. With one hand on his hip and the other forming a ridiculous arm ring, he declared, Quick, hold me! Hugging makes us closest! Subi sighed like a weary protagonist, then flattened Mo Xiaotian's messy hair with one giant hand. Didn't you say blocking the front was enough? Wouldn't it make more sense if I walked behind you? The logic drop hit like a comedic punch, leaving Mo Xiaotian blinking before sheepishly lowering his arm, realizing, oh right, that's way easier, and laughing like he just got outwitted by a punchline. You're really smart, Brother BEI. The praise slid off him like water on glass as Subi gave a light push, urging the other forward to catch up with Chi Huang's squad. Half an hour had passed since their entry into the alternate space. Subi checked his watch, and sure enough, the leaderboard was already shifting. 3 teams had earned points, with the leader holding a sharp 40, and 2 others trailing with 10 each. Subei's thoughts spun, filtering through the known point. Earning methods stealing, defeating nightmares, completing tasks, and quickly dismissed stealing and task rewards, both too high stakes or unlikely for such modest gains. The numbers screamed one thing. Those 10-point teams had likely fought and survived nightmares. But Subei's mind was already ahead, calculating the bigger picture. A task that awarded 500 points meant slaughtering beasts was pocket change by comparison, a waste of effort for so little return. If 10 points was all one got from direct confrontation, then the real prize, the real strategy, lay in chasing down the high-value tasks and rewriting the game from inside. As Subi pondered the task, a notification blinked on his device, catching his attention. It turned out the task had already been claimed by another team, with the progress now showing as 0/5. Mo Xiaotian, noticing the update, whispered in surprise, asking if they should shift their focus and search for the nightmares instead. Subi raised an eyebrow and countered, asking if Mo Xiaotian even knew where the nightmares were. Mo Xiaotian had no answer, so Subi simply shrugged. With no direction, they decided to follow the other group for now. Just then, a scream echoed ahead. Su Bei glanced toward the sound, raising an eyebrow. Looks like they've got some good luck, he remarked, sensing the situation with his heightened perception, even though the dense trees blocked their line of sight. A strange, humanoid lizard appeared right in front of the group. Its body flickered as it moved, seeming to vanish and reappear in the blink of an eye. It launched an attack. Alarmed, Su Bei quickly decided, let's get closer and see what's happening. They're already fighting. They probably won't notice us. The duo silently crept closer and found a good vantage point. The creature was entirely black, like coal, and its lizard-like form shifted in and out of visibility as it attacked Chi Huang's team. This was a nightmare lizard to be exact. Can it teleport? Mo Xiaoqin asked, unsure, as the creature kept vanishing from one spot and reappearing next to someone else. Su Bei wasn't sure either, but if teleportation was its power, it would definitely be a tough fight. The creature's ability made it incredibly elusive, continuously catching Chi Huang's team off guard and nearly shifting the battle in its favor. Teleportation was a nightmare for novice ability users, who often struggled to control their powers accurately, let alone hit something that moved unpredictably. Thankfully, the nightmare lizard wasn't a heavy hitter, or someone might have already been hurt. Meanwhile, Su Bei was closely observing the group's abilities. Chi Huang, naturally, wielded the power of the Flame Phoenix, though she was showing off skills she hadn't used during previous battles. He looked straight at the cheerful, ever-righteous Mo Xiaotian and asked if he disapproved of what just happened. Su Bei, expecting a typical shonen protagonist reaction, had already imagined a dramatic fallout and an emotional parting, but that moment never came. Instead, Mo Xiaotian blinked in confusion and casually justified it with a logic Su Bei hadn't even considered. If stealing points was fine, why not monsters? That twist hit like a punchline in a serious panel. Su Bei's mind shifted gears. This was a chance to push further. With a glint of challenge in his eyes, he tossed out a more extreme scenario. No rules, final blow, mission critical. What then? Mo Xiaotian, without skipping a beat, said he'd help steal it. That answer struck Su Bei like a panel glitch. No pause, no moral weigh-in, just straight up backup. Shocked, he could only ask, why? Chi Huang had no large area attack skills yet, but in this dense forest, even a basic fireball could do the trick. Since her single target strikes weren't working, she thought setting the forest on fire might just do the job against the nightmares. Mo Xiaotian immediately reacted, asking if they should flee before things went south. If Chi Huang planned to burn the forest, escaping unscathed would be impossible. However, Su Bei stayed calm, observing the nightmare lizard's erratic movements on the battlefield. He turned to Mo Xiaotian, questioning if the lizard's ability was truly teleportation. Mo Xiaotian froze before realizing the lizard's landing spots were always the same, limited to just 5 locations despite its fast movements. Su Bei confirmed the suspicion, and with a clear plan forming, he was ready to strike. Su Bei knew that if the nightmare lizard could truly teleport freely, it would be impossible for him to keep up with his gears to strike it down. The only way to defeat it was to outpace its teleportation. This was the dilemma facing Chi Huang's team. But when Su Bei realized the creature's landing spots were fixed, a solution became clear. They just needed to set up attacks at 5 specific locations, and no matter where it appeared, the nightmare lizard would be trapped. Mo Xiaotian's eyes lit up as he grasped the plan. Are we going to steal the kill? He asked, excitement in his voice. Su Bei looked surprised, but quickly clarified, this isn't stealing. They can't defeat it, and we're just helping. Without wasting a moment, Su Bei instructed, get ready with some air blocks to hide our presence. Once I strike, we make a quick getaway. Got it? Got it, Mo Xiaotian replied. Su Bei began positioning 10 sharp-edged gears with his mental power, setting them at the 5 locations, all while Chi Huang's team cautiously retreated to a safe distance, unaware of his careful preparations. As Chi Huang's team continued to keep the nightmare lizard cornered, Su Bei saw his opportunity. After carefully timing Chi Huang's fireball attacks, Su Bei decisively activated his gears. Instantly, the nightmare lizard appeared in the designated spot, its dark form barely noticeable before it was swiftly struck down. With a precise slash, the gear cut through its throat, spilling black, oily blood as the creature collapsed lifelessly. Without a second's hesitation, Su Bei whispered, "Run!" And, with Mo Xiaotian at his side, they fled the scene. The group didn't notice the sudden death of the nightmare lizard as they were focused on the chaos around them. As they ran for nearly a mile, Mo Xiaoshan, breathless and exhilarated, praised the thrilling escape. Su Bei, always composed, glanced at his watch. The task count had updated to 1/5, and he nodded in satisfaction, wondering how the system had so quickly confirmed the kill. He looked at the bright-eyed Mo Xiaotian and asked if he was going to object, but instead of the dramatic resistance Su Bei had rehearsed in his head, Mo just tilted his head and said the rules were fair game, so monster stealing was fine too. Su Bei blinked, surprised by the easy logic, then decided to test him further with a moral curveball. What if there were no such rules? And Su Bei jumped in to finish off a dying nightmare for the mission's sake? He expected hesitation, a long pause, maybe even a disapproving glare. But Mo Xiaotian answered immediately, like it was obvious he'd help him steal it. Su Bei's mind stalled, caught off guard. Why? Mo Xiaoshan declared confidently, "We're teammates. As long as it benefits the team, I'll support it." Su Bei pressed further. "Even if it goes against your principles?" Mo Xiaotian shook his head. "Number, I wouldn't harm my teammates." To an outsider, his words would seem noble. A teammate driven by principles yet ready to make sacrifices. If this were part of a story, he'd likely win the hearts of many fans who admired his loyalty and sense of justice. However, what they didn't know was that Mo Xiaoxian wasn't talking about the protagonist team. He was referring to the Black Lightning organization, his true allies. If the organization demanded harm to the team, Mo Xiaotian would likely comply. Su Bei sighed, a touch of sadness in his exhale, and instead of anger, gently ruffled Mo Xiaotian's hair. Don't put too much faith in your teammates. After all, what kind of fate could a character planted by a villainous group have? At best, they'd be discarded once exposed, at worst, betrayed. Without waiting for a response from Mo Xiaotian, Su Bei swiftly shifted the conversation. We didn't earn any points for defeating the nightmares earlier. It seems that once we take on this mission, no other points can be earned. Huh? Mo Xiaotian, easily distracted, immediately latched onto the new topic. Then we need to finish this mission quickly or we'll be at a huge disadvantage. If they failed to complete the mission, even if they eliminated other contestants, they wouldn't earn any new points. Mo Xiaotian seemed far more excited about the prospect of fighting humans than nightmares. Su Bei, however, wasn't in a hurry. In a world full of S, the two pinpointed Jiang Tianming's location on the map and set off toward it. But, as fate would have it, their journey led them straight into a surprise encounter with the nightmares, a monkey-like creature. This was strange, because they'd walked for quite a while without running into anything. The beast, seemingly drawn to them, must have considered them intruders in its territory. Suddenly, stones were hurled at them, knocking them dizzy. Mo Xiaotian, with a mix of excitement and disbelief, remarked on their luck in encountering one so soon. But Su Bei kept his thoughts to himself, silently wondering if the real lucky one was Jiang Tianming. Shifting his focus, he attacked the monkey with a gear, but the creature easily dodged. The monkey's speed was astounding, darting through the treetops with fluid precision, far more agile than the lizard beast they'd faced earlier. Su Bei's expression darkened this monkey might be a far tougher opponent. Mo Xiaotian quickly noted their disadvantage. It's too fast. I can't even get a hit in. Trapping it seems impossible. Su Bei, faced with a change in plans, quickly adapts after his initial strategy is foiled. Initially, he had relied on Mo Xiaotian using air blocks to trap the monkey while he attacked. But with Mo Xiaotian anticipating this, Su Bei quickly realizes a shift in roles is necessary. Deciding to reverse their roles, Su Bei will now handle the containment while Mo Xiaotian will focus on the offensive. As the monkey launches stone projectiles, Su Bei dodges and asks Mo Xiaotian about his explosive block. Mo Xiaotian admits he can only control 3 explosive blocks at once, a limit he acknowledges with a hint of embarrassment. Su Bei, impressed by his honesty, nods in agreement and begins his plan. He directs Mo Xiaoxian to place explosive blocks at strategic points, ensuring an attack on the monkey's location. Mo Xiaotian, undeterred by the chaos around him, confirms he can do so and is confident that his bombs will be effective after all. Speedsters like the monkey usually have weak defenses. Su Bei didn't wait. He laid down the plan fast and sharp. He'd corner it to 3 fixed zones, and Mo Xiaotian had one shot to blow it when the moment felt right. No pressure, just truth. The monkey wasn't dumb. It taunted from a distance. Never approaching, always scheming. If it figured out Mo Xiaotian's timing, the whole trick would fall apart too late, too obvious. That's why they only got one real chance. The 3 blocks were just backup illusions. Only one was wired. Mo Xiaotian gave a grave nod, locking into the seriousness. Meanwhile, the monkey kept pelting stones like it had infinite ammo. Did it ever run out? Su Bei didn't wait to find out. He launched gears rapid fire, each burst forcing the monkey into motion, hurting it toward the first block. It passed with no bang. No reaction from Su Bei. He was already aiming it toward the next. The monkey shrieked wildly as it darted through the trees, flinging stones with manic precision while dodging spinning gears. One sharp hit slammed into Subei's arm. He hissed, but didn't slow down, diving to avoid another strike. The rhythm had shifted. Now every ounce of the Nightmare Monkey's fury targeted him alone. Gears spun like clockwork death traps, but his focus was stretched thin. Control the attack, dodge the stones, don't collapse. His body bore the marks of every misstep, pain crackling through his frame like fractured ink. Any other rookie would have already been down, but he wasn't here to complain. Bleeding, exhausted, he led the beast past the explosive blocks, silent, determined. There was no glance back, no plea for help. He'd staked everything on a single belief trust once given isn't withdrawn. If the one behind him was going to strike, it would be when it mattered most. As Su Bei triggered the second round of explosives, everything exploded in a fiery spectacle. The blast sent the monkey screaming, its black blood splattering as it fell from the trees. Subei's heart soared. Without missing a beat, he hurled more gears at the spot where the monkey had crashed, determined to finish the job. Glancing at his watch, the taskbar showed progress 3 out of 5. He sighed with relief. They had done it, and the others were catching up too. Just then, Mo Xiaotian rushed over, sweat dripping from his forehead despite the cold. Su Bei hadn't noticed how tense things had been for Mo Xiaotian, whose focus had been razor sharp, waiting for the perfect moment to set off the explosion. It was a challenging task, one that required every ounce of concentration, but it was done. Still, something didn't feel right to Su Bei as he looked down at himself, sensing that things were far from over. Mo Xiaotian's face tightened with guilt as he looked at the blood on Subei's arm. "I'm sorry, I was too slow. What happened? What can I do to help?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Su Bei, with a chuckle, ripped a piece of fabric from his shirt and expertly wrapped it around the wound. Finishing the quick bandage, he reached over and ruffled Mo Xiaotian's hair. "I'm hungry. Let's find something to eat." Su Bei wasn't lying. Although it was still early, the endless walking and fighting had drained him of energy. Mo Xiaotian, relieved to hear Su Bei was just hungry, perked up and nodded eagerly. "Okay." Then, as if struck by a sudden thought, he added, "Can we eat nightmare monkey meat?" Su Bei smirked. "You've never been to the Academy's Points cafeteria, huh? It's edible." With that, Su Bei approached the monkey's lifeless body. Despite its black blood, the edible parts were probably no different from any other animal's baigan. Using his gear, Su Bei sliced off some of the blood-soaked meat and handed it to Mo Xiaotian. As Su Bei glanced around the warped remnants of the academy, he calmly suggested, "Let's find a place to make a fire." Though confident on the outside, a sigh slipped through. This would have been simpler if Qi Huang were still around. Even so, with Mo Xiaotian beside him, it wasn't hopeless. Su Bei crouched, skillfully arranging kindling and dry twigs into a precise nest, adding wood shavings like a survivalist on autopilot. When ready, he turned to Mo with a spark in his eye. "Create an air block filled with pure oxygen," he instructed. Boom! Flames sprang to life instantly. Su Bei cracked open a bottle of mineral water, casually rinsed the meat, skewered it, and passed it over. "Can you grill your own?" Mo lit up like it was a game. "Of course. I used to work at a barbecue joint." That was all Su Bei needed to hear. He dumped his meat over too. "Help me with mine while you're at it." Truth was, even if his food wasn't deadly, no one should have to eat it twice. As Su Bei glanced around, he suggested, "Let's find a spot to make a fire." Though he had acquired wilderness survival skills, the task would have been far easier if Qi Huang were with him. However, with Mo Xiaotian by his side, starting a fire wasn't an insurmountable challenge. Su Bei gathered small branches, added some wood shavings, and prepared fire-starting sticks. Once everything was set, he turned to Mo Xiaotian and said, "Create an air block filled with pure oxygen over this." With the increased oxygen, the fire caught quickly. Su Bei then rinsed off the blood from the meat and skewered it on a sharpened stick before handing it to Mo Xiaotian. "Can you grill the meat yourself?" he asked. Mo Xiaotian, eager and confident, replied, "Of course! I even worked part-time at a barbecue restaurant before." Seeing his enthusiasm, Su Bei handed over his portion, clasped his hands together, and said, "I'll leave it to you. Help me grill mine too." There was no other choice. Su Bei knew his limits. While his cooking wasn't deadly, it certainly wasn't delicious. Mo Xiaotian laughed loudly, his amusement fading as he responded to Su Bei's question. Raised by his grandmother, she wanted him to do something meaningful. Running a convenience store seemed too insignificant, so now he aimed to become a powerful ability user and rid the world of nightmares. Su Bei, frowning slightly, disagreed, arguing that transforming the store into a chain could help countless students, the future of the nation. Mo Xiaotian's eyes lit up, realizing the value in that idea. When asked who had called it trivial, he listed teachers, classmates, and even his grandma, admitting Su Bei was the first to see its potential. Su Bei suggested asking Jiang Tianming and the others, confident they'd agree with him. Despite his smile, his eyes remained cold. He realized his emotions were written all over his face, so he quickly closed his eyes, pretending to rest. Mo Xiaotian, noticing this, assumed Su Bei needed a break and stopped talking. In reality, Su Bei was deep in thought. From Mo Xiaotian's words, Su Bei sensed something unusual about the people around him. While it was expected for teachers and guardians to dismiss a dream as childish, it was odd that his classmates consistently mocked his ambitions. To most, a convenience store near school was a haven, and even if they didn't dream of owning one, they wouldn't ridicule someone else's dream. This made Su Bei suspect that Mo Xiaotian's classmates weren't just ordinary kids. Considering Mo Xiaotian's ties to the Black Lightning organization, Su Bei couldn't help but think more deeply. He opened his eyes and casually asked, "Where did you go to elementary and middle school?" Mo Xiaotian answered, "I went to a private school in a small county." It was a seamless transition from elementary to middle school, so you probably haven't heard of it, while handing over a perfectly grilled skewer of meat. "Here, it's ready." Su Bei glanced at him, took the skewer, and said nothing more. Whether or not Mo Xiaotian had intentionally interrupted his questions with the food, Su Bei knew it was better not to press further. He hadn't forgotten Mo Xiaotian's terrifying reaction when they first met, noticing Su Bei observing him. Until he was fully prepared, it was best to avoid probing too deeply. The grilled meat tasted surprisingly good, like chicken, and though it lacked seasoning, Mo Xiaotian's grilling skills made it enjoyable. As Su Bei bit into the tender, juicy meat, he felt his energy slowly returning. Unlike regular meat, the nightmare's flesh not only restored physical strength, but also enhanced mental powers. This made it a prized dish in the Academy's points cafeteria. After the monthly exam, Su Bei eagerly anticipated his chance to feast there. Just as they savored their meal, a voice suddenly pierced the air. It was Zhou Renji! Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian quickly exchanged glances, shoving the last bite of meat into their mouths, extinguishing the fire, and rushing into the bushes to hide. Seconds later, Zhou Renji appeared, flanked by Ai Baozhu and Si Zhaohua. The others, Zhao Xiaoyu and Wu Jin, were nowhere to be seen. "They must have heard us and run off," Ai Baozhu remarked, eyeing the still smoking fire pit. "But I'm starving. What do we do now?" Zhou Renji sniffed the air, awkwardly laughing. "They were probably cooking Nightmare's meat. If we find one, we can eat too." Ai Baozhu turned to Si Zhaohua, saying, "Zhaohua, it's up to you now." She chuckled softly, a touch of worry in her voice. She hadn't expected his power to work like that and warned him to be careful next time. Calmly, he tied back his silver hair, artistic as ever, and assured her it would be fine. Nearby, Su Bei elbowed Mo Xiaotian, curious about how that ability could attract nightmares, but Mo Xiaotian was clueless and suggested leaving. Su Bei immediately refused. This was the perfect moment to complete their mission. They only needed one more nightmare, and if Si Zhaohua could draw them in, why waste the opportunity? High above the forest, Si Zhaohua had already transformed, his angelic wings slicing through the air with divine elegance. Sunlight or not, he looked ethereal, but even so, an angel floating over a wild forest still felt strangely misplaced. 5 minutes later, just as predicted, the first nightmare showed up on cue, a nightmare monkey lunging right at him. Si Xiaohua's words floated in the air with a soft chuckle, yet there was an unmistakable hint of concern in his voice. I didn't realize your ability could be used like this. Be careful next time, okay? Don't worry, Si Xiaohua reassured as he pulled his silver hair into a neat ponytail, the artistic vibe around him unmistakable. It'll be fine. As the conversation drifted, Su Bei, ever curious, nudged Mo Xiaotian, an intrigued glint in his eyes. What do you think his power does to attract nightmares? Mo Xiaotian shook his head, his face a picture of confusion. I have no idea. Should we leave? Of course not. Su Bei's reply came with unshakable confidence. This is the perfect chance to complete our mission. They were so close to finishing the task, with just one more nightmare needed. If Si Xiaohua truly had the ability to draw them in, staying here was their best bet. In the clearing, Si Xiaohua had already begun his angel transformation. His wings, white and elegant, caught the air as he ascended, a vision of grace and power. If the sun had been present, he might have looked divine. Yet, in this forest, an angel seemed somewhat out of place. After a few minutes of soaring, the first nightmare appeared. Just as expected, a nightmare monkey came charging, heading straight for Si Xiaohua. Ai Baoju's face turned pale as the monkey's relentless attacks drained her mental energy, threatening to overwhelm her mind. With no time to waste, Si Xiaohua sprang into action, his feathers slicing through the air with precision. This particular monkey, unlike the one Su Bei had faced before, was fixated on breaking the barrier, thanks to Si Xiaohua's overwhelming presence. After withstanding several strikes, the monkey began to realize the danger and attempted to retreat. But before it could escape, a mysterious gear appeared, slicing its neck before vanishing without a trace. In the blink of an eye, a white feather landed in the exact same spot, making it seem as if the feather had struck the fatal blow. The silent, swift kill went unnoticed by Si Xiaohua and his companions, while Su Bei and Mo Xiaotian exchanged a satisfied smile, quietly completing their mission and withdrawing.